Chapter 592. It didn't take long before they arrived at the ruins where Reynolds was. Foo! Foo! Foo Foo shouted at the ruins. This scene was very similar to the time when Reynolds found Mano after the explosion in the control room of Chaldea. However, at that time, Foo Foo was shouting at Mano, who was under the mud. Now it was shouting at Reynolds, who was under the ruins. However, unlike Manua, who was on the verge of death, when everyone came here and saw the situation in the ruins, they could not help but be stunned. There was no other reason. What was buried in the ruins was not a mangled human body, as everyone had imagined. Instead, it was a huge shell. Kacha! 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 There was a very obvious ferocious mark on the shell, causing the whole shell to slowly crack and break into pieces. And in the cracked shell, Reynolds was lying inside with a pale face. Senpai. Mano was surprised and happy. You didn't die? Calmephala was also overjoyed. Ho ho. Even Townsend clicked his tongue in admiration. So that's how it is, you summoned a defensive tamed demon in advance, just in case. Yes, just in case, Reynolds summoned this tamed demon to protect himself before the battle started. Giant Shell Summoning. This was the last magic spell that Reynolds learned that could summon an intermediate tamed demon. It could summon a shell with strong defense, and when the summoner was attacked, it could swallow the summoner into the shell to protect him. Before the start of the battle, Reynolds had summoned it out just in case and hid it underground in case of an emergency. This action ultimately saved Reynolds' life. When Reynolds was struck with a fatal blow, the giant shell that was on standby under his feet broke out of the ground on the spot and swallowed him into its stomach, protecting him. In other words, his attack had hit the hard shell and not Reynolds. However, looking at the slowly shattering shell, Reynolds still had lingering fear. It's just a single strike, yet it was shattered. What a monster! The shell that Reynolds summoned might not be as strong as Mano's shield, but it was enough to make most of the higher-level tamed demons look up to it. It didn't have the ability to fight, and it didn't have any other abilities. It only had the ability to protect its master, and Reynolds was quite confident in its high defense. He didn't expect that the method he was so confident in could only withstand one attack. Can that monster really be defeated? Reynolds smiled bitterly. The one who answered this question was none other than Townsend. Don't worry, you did defeat it. That little girl's last attack already shattered its spirit core. Townsend grinned and said so. Of course, you've only killed him once. If it wasn't for Serena defeating him long ago and exhausting all of his treasures, you wouldn't have any chance of defeating him. Many's words to understand the meaning of this sentence. Kill it only once. Calmephala was a bit confused. Serena's already defeated him? Manua, who helped Reynolds out of the shell, was also stunned. Did he use up his noble artifact? Renaud furrowed his brows. Seeing this, Townsend looked at everyone. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go somewhere else. With these words, the crowd left the battlefield and slowly walked toward the hiding place where they could settle down. The sky gradually darkened. Although that was the case, when Reynolds and the others moved to this era, the sky was already dark. It was as if it was swallowed by an invisible force, and it was extremely depressing. But now, the skies seemed to have become even darker, and the depressing feeling became even stronger. Under such circumstances, Reynolds and his group found a place to hide. It was a church located in a remote area. Among the enemies, there's that troublesome guy who can snipe from a few kilometers away. Talking in a place with a wide field of vision is simply asking for death. So let's go inside. Townsend, who suggested this, took the lead and walked into the church. Reynolds and the others looked at each other and could only follow. After entering the church, everyone came to the church with messy tables and chairs. Finally, I can breathe a sigh of relief. With a relaxed tone, Townsend sat directly on a bench, leaned on it, and even threw his staff aside. Senpai, please sit here. On the other hand, Mano helped the powerless Reynolds to sit on another bench. He didn't seem to want to leave Reynolds at all. He held his shield tightly and stood guard beside Reynolds. Looking at this scene, Reynolds felt a sense of weakness caused by the exhaustion of mana while feeling inwardly helpless. Seeing Reynolds take a fatal blow in order to save him, Manua's still had some lingering fear in his heart. Therefore, Manua's clinginess increased exponentially. He didn't want to leave Reynolds at all and stayed by Reynolds' side. When Reynolds thought so, he began to activate the magic circuit to transform vitality and generate new magical power. Calmephala seemed to have recovered his calmness and regained the demeanor of a Chaldea leader. "You are one of the followers of the Holy Grail War, Townsend, right?" Calmyra said in an aggressive tone. This made Townsend spread out his hands. He completely ignored Kamabra's overbearing attitude and spoke in a relaxed manner. "Well, don't be so vigilant with me. Didn't I say, at least, I'm not your enemy?" This servant carried out the style from the moment he appeared until now. His behavior was frivolous. This appearance made Calmephala feel extremely unhappy. He stared at Reynolds, which made Reynolds feel inexplicable. Did this guy go through menopause again? Reynolds didn't know that the reason why Calmephala acted like this was because Townsend's style was somewhat similar to his. Although Renaud was not as frivolous as Townsend, his carefree style was somewhat similar to Renaud's. Calmephala didn't say this, but he snorted coldly. "Whether you are an enemy or not, it's not up to you to decide, but up to us to judge." Calmephala said to Townsend impolitely, "We were attacked by servants after coming to St. East Castle. Since you are also a servant, we can't be careless." After all, Reynolds also said that the servants of St. East Castle were likely to attack them because of the Holy Grail War. Chapter 593. In order to win the Holy Grail War, the masters and servants had to fight each other until the last group was left. Only then would they focus on Renaud and Mano, who were also masters and servants. Since the person in front of them was also a servant, it was very likely that he would attack them because of the same situation. Carelessness was absolutely not an option. However, just when Calmephala was thinking about it, there should be no problem with this servant. Reynolds' complexion had slightly recovered, but he was still weak as he suddenly spoke. "No problem?" Calmephala was slightly surprised. Even Mano ignored Foe, who was standing on her shoulder, and was a little confused. "Oh." Townsend's interest was piqued. He asked Reynolds, "Although I said it myself, why do you think I'm not an enemy?" This question was very simple. So far, both Aether and Rufus, who have attacked us, have strange black patterns on their bodies, right? Reynolds looked at Townsend and said bluntly, "Two different servants have the same characteristics. At first, I thought it was because the summoning system of the Holy Grail War in St. East Castle was different. But you don't have it. It seems that there must be another reason for it." In that case, Townsend, who didn't have that kind of pattern on his body, was obviously different from the servants who attacked them. Based on this point alone, it can be said that you are at least different from those guys. Reynolds said very calmly, "Although I can't say for sure that you're not an enemy, you should not be a friend of those guys. After confirming this point, it is worth talking to you." Hearing this, Mano and Calmephala looked at each other and were silent. Obviously, both of them agreed with Reynolds' judgment. Townsend, on the other hand, grinned. "So that's how it is. Calm and bold. No wonder Essel did not hesitate to lure them out and let them attack you. When you entered the battle, they secretly prepared to attack you." Townsend revealed this shocking news to everyone, causing everyone to be shocked. So, that troublesome servant was actually Essel's doing? Moreover, that archer was actually hiding in the dark and prepared to attack them when they were fighting? Even Reynolds couldn't help but feel a sense of fear when he recalled the scene of Azel's arrows flying towards him during the battle with that incomparably powerful being. But since that thing didn't happen, it proved that. "The one who stopped Essel was you, right, Townsend?" Reynolds asserted. "I just don't want to stir the battle." Townsend said indifferently, "It would be a pity if such a wonderful battle was disturbed by others." This sentence should be sincere, right? Although Townsend was sure that it wasn't just for this reason, everyone could hear the sincerity in his tone. In view of this, everyone understood. The person in front of them was a real hero. Unlike Ethel and Thor, who attacked in the dark, this Townsend had the honor, dignity, and faith of a heroic spirit. Gradually, everyone began to have a sense of trust in Townsend. But that's one thing. Reynolds didn't give up because of this. Instead, he looked straight at Townsend and said, "Since you are a servant of the Holy Grail War, can you please explain to us why St. East Castle became like this?" This was the most important problem to be solved at the moment. It was related to the abnormality of St. East Castle, and it was related to the appearance of the singularity, which led to the destruction of human history. Only this problem must be solved in any case to solve all the puzzles. Unfortunately, I don't know. Townsend's straightforward answer made everyone stunned. "You don't know?" At this moment, even Reynolds was a little surprised. As a participant of the Holy Grail War in St. East Castle, how could this servant not know the reason why St. East Castle became like this? "Are you planning to deliberately hide it from us?" Calmephala was just as astonished by this, and he was furious. Reynolds said that there was no human in the entire St. East Castle. Only the servants of the Holy Grail War were left. In that case, those servants were the only ones left. How could they not know about the abnormality in St. East Castle? But Townsend still said so. "I really don't know." Townsend still didn't change his statement. It was quite straightforward. Indeed, not long ago, St. East Castle was still normal. We were just hiding in the dark to fight, advancing the Holy Grail War, and together with the masters, we challenged the other masters and servants. Townsend said so and told the information he knew. But one day, the abnormality suddenly happened. What abnormality? Fire. A fire that was enough to burn the entire St. East Castle. The fire engulfed the entire St. East Castle. The humans didn't even have time to scream before all of them were burned, including the masters who had formed a contract with the servants. In the end, only 7 servants were left. Townsend's eyes swept from Reynolds, Mano, and Calmephala's body one after another. "We obviously lost our masters, but we still existed. This is obviously an abnormal state. Even I fell into confusion at that time, and I didn't know what to do for a while." And at that time, Serene appeared. Having said that, Townsend finally became a little serious. When the rest of the servants didn't understand the situation, that guy actually restarted the Holy Grail War, found the servants one by one, and fought with them. That was the information Townsend knew. According to Townsend, Serena, who restarted the Holy Grail War, fought with Essel, Rider, Assassin, and even defeated them all. In other words, except for Townsend, the rest of the servants were killed by Serena, leaving only 2 servants in the Holy Grail War. Wait a minute. Calmephala immediately interrupted Townsend's explanation and said in amazement, "According to what you said, except for you, all the servants were defeated in the Holy Grail War? If that was the case, then what exactly was the Essel that attacked this side?" "As far as I know, in the Holy Grail War in St. East Castle, the 7 servants only had 1 life, and after they were defeated, they will disappear and will not be summoned again." Reynolds also expressed the doubts in his heart. It was not impossible for the defeated servants to appear again. Chapter 594. In the end, a servant was just an existence that descended from the seed of heroes located in the outer world. It was just a clone, and the body was still in the outer world. Even if it was killed, it was not really dead. It was just returning to the seed of heroes. That was to say, it was not impossible to summon a servant again. It was just that the so-called hero summoning was not so flexible. Whether it was St. East Castle or Chaldea, the summoning system was very random. If you wanted to summon a specific servant, you had to prepare a relic that was related to the servant's life and use it as a catalyst. Otherwise, it was nonsense. In other words, the 5 servants that were defeated by Serena, if you want to summon them again, you need to prepare a relic that was related to them. That was just one of the conditions. There was also a very important condition: magic power. Summoning a servant required a considerable amount of magic power. Even Chaldea, although there was a system that converted electricity into magic power to support the operation of the hero summoning system, it couldn't summon servants at will. Otherwise, it would fall into a dilemma of double exhaustion of magic power and electricity, which would completely paralyze the operation of Chaldea. The Holy Grail War in St. East Castle needed to draw the magic power from the veins of the earth. It would take 60 years to draw enough magic power to perform the ritual summoned servants, and formed the Holy Grail. In that case, the servants that were defeated, whether it was the rules of the Holy Grail War or the consumption of magic power, they were not allowed to be summoned again. No, they were not summoned again, but resurrected. Townsend solved everyone's doubts. Serena got the Holy Grail in advance and resurrected them with the power of the Holy Grail, but it caused their spirit to be contaminated, which led to the 5 servants to be corrupted. In addition to the Berserk servant, the other 4 servants' spirit was abnormal, and they were exiled to St. East Castle by Serena. That was the origin of the black lines on Assel's body. Because of the contamination of the power of the Holy Grail, the black lines appeared on the bodies of the 2 servants. The black lines proved that their spirit had fallen into disorder, and it also proved that they had died once, and now they were just resurrected. That's why you guys were able to defeat that one. Townsend smiled helplessly. That servant has a noble phantasm and combat power that even Serena would find difficult to deal with. If it weren't for the support of the Holy Grail, Serena might not have been able to defeat it. It seemed that because of this, the special relic lost its effect. Is that why he said we only beat him down once? From this, it could be inferred that he should have a precious artifact that could allow him to recover even if he was defeated. Thinking of this, Reynolds felt a headache coming on. That monster was already difficult to deal with. If it could make a comeback after being defeated, it would be a nightmare. However, it was precisely because the relic broke the rules that it had some kind of restriction. Is there a problem with the number of uses? If that was the case, it wouldn't be hard to explain. In the battle with Serena, he must have exhausted the usage of his relic and was killed in the end. What Reynolds encountered was that he had used up the number of times he could use his relic, so the difficulty level was greatly reduced. Luckily, Reynolds rejoiced. If he could use his relic, then we wouldn't be able to do anything. Calmephala seemed to understand this and could not help but rejoice. However, Townsend didn't care about it. The noble phantasm is the servant's trump card. It can be used to turn the tide of the battle. The existence of the noble phantasm is closely related to the outcome of the battle. Without it, the value of the servant will be greatly reduced. Townsend said such words. This sentence made Reynolds and Calmephala deeply understand. However, they didn't notice that Mano next to them lowered his head at this time, revealing a complicated expression. So, let's get back to the topic. Townsend stood up and looked at Reynolds. I say, boy, do you want to form a contract with me? I say, boy, do you want to form a contract with me? When this sentence came out from Townsend's mouth and entered Reynolds' ears, Reynolds almost didn't react. Contract? Mano and Calmephala were also stunned for a moment. Then they were surprised. Only Townsend, who proposed this matter, had the same attitude. This Holy Grail War is really abnormal. Not only all the servants became abnormal, but even the rules became abnormal. Those who were defeated were resurrected, and even the Holy Grail fell into Serena's hands. It's reasonable to say that there should be no need for that guy to fight. After all, whether it was a master or a servant, the reason for participating in the Holy Grail War was to get the Holy Grail. Now that Serena has the Holy Grail, there should be no need to provoke the Holy Grail War. This made Reynolds faintly feel that. Perhaps the Holy Grail was the source of everything. The abnormality in St. East Castle, the appearance of the singularity, it was very likely that Serena got it in advance. Otherwise, the Holy Grail War wouldn't have become like this, and there would definitely be a report of this matter in the records of Chaldea. In the records of Chaldea, although the final winner of the Holy Grail War was indeed Serena's servant, there was no record of her getting the Holy Grail in advance. The order of the events was reversed. This was the fundamental reason why the singularity was formed. So, here came a question. How did Serena get the Holy Grail? In the Holy Grail War in St. East Castle, only when there was only one master and one servant left, the Holy Grail as a trophy would appear. Before the ceremony called the Holy Grail War was over, the Holy Grail would never be formed, let alone appear in advance. In other words, the Holy Grail in Serena's hand was not the one that must be completed in the Holy Grail War. The Holy Grail that didn't belong here was in Serena's hand, which led to all of this. In that case, the second question came. Where did this Holy Grail come from? Reynolds felt that he caught a clue leading to the truth. That is to say, although I don't know where you came from, and why you have a servant that doesn't belong to the Holy Grail War, your purpose should be the Holy Grail, right? Townsend laughed as if he saw through Reynolds's mind. In that case, your purpose is the same as mine. Chapter 595. Just as Townsend said, if all the anomalies were due to the appearance of the Holy Grail that did not belong to this world, then Reynolds would have to obtain the Holy Grail in order to eliminate the disorder of this era, re-establish the foundation of humanity, correct the entire singularity, and return human history to normal. But the Holy Grail was in Serena's hands. If he wanted to get the Holy Grail, he had to fight Serena. Townsend obviously didn't know these things, but he was keenly aware of Reynolds's next purpose. My purpose is also to defeat Serena. Townsend said, so joining hands with me shouldn't be a bad thing, right? Hearing this, Renault sighed. Calmephala folded his arms. So, you want to use our power to defeat Serena? Calmephala thought so. His opponent was a servant who could defeat even those with noble phantoms. With Townsend's strength alone, he had no chance of winning against Serena. Not to mention, Serena wasn't alone. Those blackened servants are doing whatever they want in this city. Only Essel is with Serena. Townsend didn't hide his thoughts. It's already difficult to deal with Serena. Not to mention that insidious guy. I'm also in a difficult situation. In such a situation, Reynolds' appearance was indeed Townsend's last hope. As long as he signed a contract with Reynolds, not only could he get the magic power provided by the Master to strengthen his own strength, but he could also join hands with Mano to get enough manpower to challenge Serena and Essel. That was the reason why Townsend proposed the contract. Of course, it's just a temporary contract. Townsend said such words. The so-called temporary contract, as the name suggested, was a temporary contract with a time limit. Once the purpose of the contract was achieved, the contract would automatically disappear. The contract between Reynolds and Mano was a formal contract. Even Mano himself could not break it, unless the command spell was removed from Reynolds' body or the contract was abolished. Otherwise, the contract would be valid forever until the Chaldea's heroic spirit summoning system stopped working or exhausted its magic power. Generally speaking, the contract between the master and the servant was a formal contract. Even the contract between the magician and the servant was a formal contract. As for temporary contracts, they would most likely appear in trading places. By the way, the familiar summoned by Reynolds was carved into his soul due to a miracle, so it belonged to another category. As long as Reynolds' soul didn't fade away, they would always be used by Reynolds. They would obey him without question and would never truly die. This had already surpassed the scope of a contract and reached another level. It could be called an absolute contract. This was a contract that only belonged to Reynolds and could not be replicated or imitated. And such an absolute contract could also be formed by Reynolds on his own. Back then, Reynolds wanted to use this method to form a contract with Mon Nuaw and engrave Mon Nuaw into his soul. In this way, even if Mano died, Reynolds could summon him by spending magic power, and he could also pass through the gate of the alternate world. Of course, this kind of contract could not be concluded at any time. There were also restrictions, but these were all for later. All in all, Townsend only wanted to form a temporary contract and fight alongside Renault until Serena was defeated. You don't have to worry that I'll betray you. Even if it's a temporary contract, you can still use the command incantation to bind me. With this kind of coercive command authority, my credibility will be much greater, right? Townsend extended a hand towards Reynolds, his eyes also fixed on him. My goal is to end this unusual Holy Grail war, and your goal is to recover the Holy Grail. How about we achieve our goal in this Holy Grail war together? Townsend's face showed a supercilious expression. It was believed that no matter who saw this fearless expression, they would be involuntarily attracted by this hero's confidence. In this regard, Fong Li only had one sentence. What's your real name? This was Fong Li's last question. At the same time, it was also the most important secret of a heroic spirit. However, Townsend said it out loud. My name is Siyu Chulin, a member of the Irish Red Branch Knights. The servant who revealed his real name grinned. Nice to meet you, master. Hearing this, Reynolds also smiled. Immediately, Reynolds reached out his hand and shook the servant's hand in front of him. True name. As the name implied, it was the real name of the servants. The servants were all characters that existed in various legends, fantasies, and even myths. Their names were passed down to later generations and were known by later generations. Take Townsend, for example. He was the famous hero of the Ulster region of Northern Ireland in Celtic mythology, Siú Chulin. Legend has it that he was a half-human, half-god hero. His father was the god of light, Lugar, so he was called the Son of Light of Ireland. Legend had it that he was fancied by the Witch of the Shadow Country, who could even kill gods. He learned amazing spear techniques and magic in the Shadow Country, and after finishing his apprenticeship, he directly joined the famous Red Branch Knights. He was almost invincible on the battlefield, and no one could match him. The spear he held was a magic spear that could kill. Once he stabbed, he could take the enemy's heart. The magic he learned was the magic of rune. In Germanic mythology, Odin, the father of the gods, used an eye as the price to exchange for supreme wisdom. As long as the symbol of the spell was engraved on any material, it could exert infinite power. In Europe, his name was so famous that it was comparable to the legendary king of knights, Arthur, and the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules. And in Ireland, where he was born, he had the highest reputation. He was the strongest knight and also a famous sage. In his own words, that was, if he could be summoned with his class, it would be much easier to deal with Serena. That was what Townsend said. However, Reynolds deeply agreed. Although Townsend's magic is strong enough, when it comes to Siú Chulin, his spear is still more famous, right? Once the attack was launched, the magic spear would definitely hit the enemy's heart. Townsend, who held this spear, was at his strongest. Unfortunately, Townsend, who was summoned with his spiritual base, did not get the magic spear. He could only use the rune from Northern Europe as a sage. However, even so, the current Townsend was definitely a first-class servant. After all, he had already revealed a shocking news. I have secretly killed the resurrected ones, and the troublesome one was taken care of by you guys. The only ones left are Serena and Assel. Chapter 596. Townsend spoke in an indifferent tone, leaving Reynolds and the others speechless. As long as I could defeat all the servants, the Holy Grail War will end, and my goal will be achieved. I will be free from this unpleasant situation. With that in mind, Townsend defeated the three servants. It could be seen that even with the current spiritual base, Townsend still had a good combat power. Compared to Serena, it was still unknown, but compared to Essel, he should not be inferior. At least, Townsend was definitely much stronger than Mano. With his help, the odds of winning were not small. Of course, Kamabra had been looking at Townsend with suspicion all this time. Who knows if this servant is trustworthy or not? In the Holy Grail War? Get rid of the abnormal Holy Grail War? Is his goal really that simple? Kalmephala doubted this point. No matter what, the servants participated in the Holy Grail War and signed contracts with their masters. The fundamental purpose was to get the Holy Grail, the wishing machine. If Townsend was only putting up a good front and was actually after the Holy Grail, then they were just being used by him. In view of this, Kalmephala did not fully trust Townsend. As for the binding of the command spell on Townsend, he is the forest sage who learned the original rune magic from Northern Europe. As a magician, he is more powerful than anyone in modern times. Who knows if he has the means to break the contract? Because of this, Kalmephala was not very willing to trust Townsend. Of course, Reynolds also thought about this problem. After all, the command spell is also a crystallization of pure magic. If it is the most powerful magician, maybe there's a way to deal with it. But this was only limited to before Townsend reported his real name. After Townsend reported his real name, Reynolds basically believed him. The reason was simple. This is not something that can be reported casually. That was the reason why Reynolds chose to believe Townsend, because if he reported his real name, it was equivalent to revealing his identity. Because servants were famous in various legends, once their real name was revealed, it meant a lot of things. For example, the type and effect of the noble phantoms that they had when they were alive. Another example was the weakness and cause of death when they were alive. As long as he knew all this, he would be able to target them. Using Townsend as an example, if his spiritual base had descended and he had a demonic spear that had to have a heart, then as long as he used inanimate objects such as puppets and golems without hearts to deal with him, the demonic spear would not be able to unleash its terrifying effects. This was just a strategy to deal with the relic. If it was targeted at the servant's weakness and cause of death, it would be enough to change the outcome of the battle. This caused the servant's real name to become something that must not be revealed. Since Townsend revealed his real name so readily, it was enough to prove his sincerity. Besides, could the Irish Child of Light be a traitor? It was said that Townsend's original name was not Cuchulainn, but Satant. The name Cuchulainn was given to himself later on. It meant Coden's fierce dog. The reason for his name was that he had accidentally killed the guard dog of the wealthy merchant, Coden, when he was young. If this dog has offspring, I will be responsible for raising it and train it to be a strong and loyal guard dog. Before that, I will protect you. That was the origin of the name Cuchulainn. Although in the myths, Cuchulainn had a violent personality and temper, he was also a ruthless person who could ignore Azrael Morgan's love and tie himself to a stone pillar before he died. Reynolds did not believe that such a person would betray him for the sake of obtaining the Holy Grail. Of course, if this is a lie, then just pretend that I didn't say anything. This was something that was unlikely to happen. Whether it was Townsend's real name or not, they would know after watching Townsend's battle. Cuchulainn was a famous practitioner of rune magic. It was not easy to impersonate him. Just like that, Reynolds and Townsend signed a temporary contract and became allies. Let's go and find trouble with Serena and Assel tomorrow. Saying so, Townsend shot a glance at Reynolds' pale face and laughed wildly. Before that, you should have a good rest, master. Therefore, they decided to move to tomorrow. To Reynolds, this was also something that he could not ask for more. Reynolds smiled helplessly as he recovered his mana and looked at Mano's silent face. I still have to take care of the younger generation. The sky above the St. East Castle was still dark and had not changed at all. In the church located in a secluded area, Reynolds and the others seemed to have gone to rest. The church was silent. Katja, at a certain moment, the door of the chapel was opened with a slight sound of the door opening. Mano walked out of the church with a shield in his hand and slowly walked to the courtyard. Fu! Standing on Mon Nua's shoulder, Fo called out as if it was asking a question. Sorry, I just came out to take a look, Mon Nua said to Fo, who was on his shoulder. He then raised his head and looked at the sky. At this moment, Mano's eyes flickered with a different kind of expression. That kind of expression was exactly the same as Mano's lonely expression when he looked at the sky in Chaldea. It looked pitiful, but it also looked extremely beautiful. In such a situation, even Fo didn't want to break such a scene, so she obediently stayed silent. However, there are always people who don't know what's good for them. It didn't take long for a second person to walk out of the church. Thanks to his demi-servant status, Mano immediately noticed someone approaching. He turned his head and looked at the door behind him. In the next second, Mano was startled at first, then he spoke. Senpai. The person who came was Reynolds. Looking at Ma Nua, who was standing alone in the courtyard, Renaud walked over. Did I disturb you? Reynolds stood shoulder to shoulder with Ma Nua. He stretched lazily and giggled insincerely. He probably didn't feel that he was disturbing Ma Nua, right? This familiar style made Mano's lonely face slightly relieved, and he showed a faint smile. Senpai, are you okay? Mano asked with concern. Yes, there's no problem. You know my magic circuit. Even if I exhaust all my magic power, one night is enough for me to recover. Renaud shrugged and replied with a prideful tone. Chapter 597. Manua could only think of one thing when he saw that smug and childish behavior. When it's time to be serious, he's more serious than anyone else. When it's time to work hard, he works harder than anyone else. He usually looks very undisciplined, but he's more reliable than anyone else at the critical moment. Even if his physical fitness is very low, his mind is quite smart. Then, there's some resistance, some childishness. This is the Reynolds that Manua knows. Being with this kind of Reynolds, Manua always unconsciously relaxed. Obviously, there's no room to relax at all. While Manua was deep in thought, he suddenly realized that there was a finger pressing between his eyebrows. "You're frowning like a sandwich." Reynolds smoothed Manua's eyebrows with his finger and said helplessly, "What are you thinking about? Why are you so lost in thought?" Reynolds also looked directly at Manua, being stared at by Reynolds's eyes, which were not deep, but appeared to be very sincere and calm. Manua's heart could not help but feel slightly flustered. No, nothing. This sentence has not completely come out of Manua's mouth, but it was directly denied by Reynolds. "Who are you kidding?" Reynolds said angrily. "You can't hide your thoughts at all, let alone me. You can't even hide it from others." Although the tone was full of anger, the content was quite persuasive. "Isn't that right? In this world, there is no one who knows you better than me, my most lovely junior." Reynolds's teasing made Manua's pretty face blush slightly. But soon, Manua's expression returned to a little loneliness. "Senpai." Finally, facing the closest and most familiar person, Manua couldn't help but speak. "Am I very useless?" With such a sentence, you can know what Manua's mood is now. However, this is also something that can't be helped. "I have already decided to help Senpai, but I have been holding you back," Manua said in a dejected tone. "When in Chaldea, because of me, Senpai was locked in a sealed control room and almost died. After becoming a demi-servant, I was supposed to protect Senpai, but Senpai protected me and got attacked. Senpai, you have the best master quality. You should have formed a contract with the best servant. That way, you could have easily broken through your current predicament. In the end, you formed a contract with a half-baked person like me." Every sentence was telling of the guilt in Manua's heart. Facing such a Manua, what could Reynolds say? To comfort her? It was empty. Was it perfunctory? That would be foolish. At this point in time, no matter what he said, it would be difficult for it to work. After all, the truth was right in front of him. Renaud was indeed recognized as the best master, second to none. Mano, on the other hand, was indeed a dabbler. He had only obtained the power of a servant not long ago and had no combat experience at all. Manua was facing a very serious problem. "I don't even know the true name of the servant who gave me the power." Manua whispered this extremely serious problem. That's right. Mano did not know the true name of the servant who gave him power. This led to, "I can't even use the noble phantasm of a servant." This was the proof that Manua was still a dabbler. He couldn't use his noble phantasm. In other words, he couldn't use his trump card to turn defeat into victory. Such a Manua's combat power had undoubtedly decreased a lot. "Senpai, do you know?" Manua raised his head and looked at Reynolds. "If it's Senpai who is a master, you should be able to analyze the ability value of a servant, right?" Hearing this, Reynolds's eyes reflexively showed a message. The power exerted when protecting oneself or one's camp could exert damage reduction beyond the limit of the defense value, but the target does not include oneself. The higher the level, the wider the range of protection. It was a special skill possessed by the subservient. It inherited one of the skills possessed by the heroic spirit and sublimated it into its own style. The inherited skill was magic defense, which was the same type of skill as magic release. It could directly transform magic into defensive power. If it had a huge amount of magic, it would not be a problem to even become a sacred wall to protect a country. Preservation skill, now fragile snowflake wall. It could transform a user's spiritual power into physical defense. The stronger the spiritual power, the stronger the belief, and the higher the defense. But at present, it didn't play its true value. The sometimes hazy chalk wall, stagger the target on the time axis for a while, thus avoiding the attack. If the level was high, even the attack of a higher dimension could be avoided. Determined to rise shield. Courage. No matter who you face, you will not give up the person you are protecting. In order to better grasp the performance of the servant, the master usually needed to observe with a naked eye to confirm the ability of the servant. The above were the values that appeared after the performance of the servant was digitized. As Mano said, as long as the master was there, it could be confirmed. Among them, the attributes represented the camp that the servant was inclined to. Strength, durability, agility, magic, luck, and noble phantoms represented the strength of the servant's body, the damage that the servant could withstand, the speed of the body and reaction, the amount of magic that the servant could control, the quality of luck, and the strength of the noble phantoms. Like the level of noble phantoms, it was generally divided into 5 levels: A, B, C, D, and E. The highest level was A, the lowest was E, and the highest level was X. As for the class skills and preservation skills, they were all special abilities that belonged to the servant. The difference was that the class skills depended on the servant's class, and the preservation skills depended on the servant's ability when he was alive. For example, the 3 classes of servants, Serena and Essel, were generally given magic skills and had a certain degree of magic resistance. Therefore, they were also known as the 3 knights. The servants of the class were generally given writing skills. Townsend's skills were tools and formation construction, and his skills were breath break and berserk. These were all class skills, and the servant who obtained the class would generally have these relative skills. The preservation skills were the ability that the servant had when he was alive. For example, Essel's projection magic and clairvoyance were the ability that he had when he was alive. Townsend also had the preservation skill of rune magic. Powerful servants could even have skills that were comparable to noble phantoms. Chapter 598. Because of this, Reynolds could also confirm Mon-Nua's ability value and observe it clearly in his eyes. The better the master's ability is, the more he can analyze the servants, right? Mon-Nua looked at Reynolds with hope in his eyes. If it's senpai, then he will be able to know the servant's ability value to the greatest extent. This was indeed the truth. As Mon-Nua said, the higher the master's ability, the higher the ability value of the servant that could be confirmed. In Reynolds's case, his attributes, ability value, class skills, and skills could all be seen. His ability as a master could be seen from this. It wasn't Reynolds' first time seeing Mano's ability value. After all, mastering the servant's ability was the first thing a qualified master should do. Reynolds had already confirmed Mano's ability value during Essel's attack. However, when he first saw Mon-Nua's ability value, Reynolds was still quite puzzled. It's fine if the level of the relic can't be confirmed, but I can't even confirm the level of the skill. But now, Reynolds finally understood. The reason why there was no way to confirm the level of the relic was that Mon-Nua could not use it yet. The reason why the level of the skills was uncertain was that Mano had not yet fully mastered the power of a servant. In other words, she still had a lot of room for growth, which led to this. Even the level of Reliance Inheritance was displayed as a question mark, which proved that Mon-Nua still had a lot of potential and uncertainty. However, what Reynolds really cared about was Mon-Nua's rank. Shielder, Shield-Bearer. It was an unorthodox class that was different from the 7 major classes. Only servants who did not meet the requirements of the basic classes would have it after meeting certain conditions. Just like the system bug, it was an exception among exceptions. A servant with an unorthodox class might not necessarily be stronger than a servant with an orthodox class, but they were often very special. They might have abnormal ability values, unexpected skills, or amazing relics. The servant who transferred his power to Mon-Nua was obviously one of them. Shielder, Shield Soldiers. Reynolds did not know much about this class, but he could guess that it must be a servant with a shield or some kind of skill or relic to protect himself and his companions. In other words, Mano was a servant who had specialized in defense. This point could be seen from his ability value. With the highest level of durability and so many defensive skills, it's not strange at all for him to obtain this job class. It was precisely because of his outstanding defense that Mana was able to completely withstand the attacks of such a monster despite being a dabbler. Even so, it could not hide the fact that Manua could not use a relic. The shield in his hand was just a relatively sturdy shield. It had not yet unleashed the power of a relic. If the power of the relic could be unleashed, it should be like the magic spear that Townsend had when he was alive. It should have the amazing effect of hitting the target's heart. In order to achieve this effect, the real name of the relic must be released. After all, famous weapons would have their own names, just like the heroic spirits of their owners. Only when the real name was released could the real power of the relic be unleashed. That was the problem. Manua did not even know the real name of the hero spirit that gave him the power, so how would he know the real name of the relic? Therefore, Manua hoped that Reynolds could analyze it. Unfortunately, no matter what, if the real name of the servant can be analyzed by the master's ability, then the servant has no reason to hide its real name. Reynolds said with a bitter smile. With Reynolds' ability, the ability value that he could analyze had reached the maximum level. As for the real name, it was impossible to know it by the master's ability alone. Otherwise, no matter what kind of servant he faced, the master could instantly know the effect and weakness of the relic, which was too unreasonable. Is that so? Manua was a little disappointed. That was not disappointment for Reynolds, but disappointment for himself. Sorry, senpai. I pushed my problem to you, Manua said sadly. Sure enough, senpai should be with a better. This time, Reynolds did not let Manua finish his words. If you say that again, I will be angry. Reynolds said this quite seriously, and Manua closed his mouth in panic. Seeing this, Reynolds' expression was slightly relaxed. He stretched out his hand and touched Manua's head. Don't worry. Reynolds curled his lips and smiled. Since I'm the best master, then you won't be a half-baked servant forever. So, trust me, just leave it to me. In the end, Reynolds did not choose to comfort him, but made a firm promise. Senpai, Manua suddenly looked at Reynolds in a daze. Looking at the confident expression on his face, the loneliness in his heart gradually disappeared. That's right. Trust him. As long as I trust the person in front of me, it will be fine. So, I will give everything to him and dedicate it to him. Dedicate it to the senpai who has been leading me forward. In this way, we will be able to break through all the difficulties. Definitely, the next day, the time for the battle quietly came. When Reynolds and Manua returned to the chapel, Calmephala had already woken up. It seems that you are prepared. You are really a newcomer who can't be underestimated. After saying that, Townsend also appeared in a cloud of blue light particles. He leaned his wooden staff on his shoulder. His face was carrying a fearless smile as always. Seeing Townsend suddenly appeared, Calmephala was startled, and then she vented her anger. Since you're next to me, don't use spirit form. Do you want to scare me to death? As mentioned before, in essence, servants are actually spirits, but they are more powerful than ordinary spirits. They are comparable to elves. In that case, servants can naturally restore their spirit form, so that ordinary people can't observe their existence with naked eyes. This is the so-called spirit form. During the confrontation with Assel, the reason why she turned into light particles and disappeared was also because she used the servant's characteristic to return to the state of a spirit and hide her body, but she didn't really disappear. Obviously, when everyone was resting, Townsend stayed in the chapel in his spirit form, but he didn't tell Calmephala, which scared Calmephala, so she vented her anger on Townsend. Chapter 599. In response, Townsend shrugged. Although servants don't need to rest, they need to consume mana to carry out life activities. When you rest, I naturally have to restore my status. It was for this reason that Townsend had maintained his spiritualization to recover his stamina and mana. He had only reappeared now. What a convenient stunt. Manui didn't know whether it was out of envy or practicality that he blurted out. Servants could spiritualize to reduce mana consumption and even restore mana. But as a subservient, Mano, who had a real body, couldn't do that. Of course, because he had a physical body, Mano didn't need to consume mana for life activities. Even if he couldn't use spirit form, it didn't affect him much. Looking at such a group of people, Renaud, who was playing with foe on his shoulder, finally turned his head. My mana is almost restored. Even if it's not 10 cooldown, it's at least 80 or 90%. There was only one purpose for this sentence. That was to declare to everyone, it's time to go to Serena's location. Renaud made a declaration of battle. This made Mano and Calmephala tense their faces at the same time. Then, please allow me to go with you. Mano said to Renaud, although I'm not mature yet, I will do my best to protect the master. As he spoke, Mon Nua's gaze was surprisingly firm. There's no way. Calmephala sighed. It's too late to say that I don't want to go to that place. Anyway, I still can't contact Chaldea, so I'll go with you. In other words, Calmephala was ready to take the risk. I don't mind. Townsend glanced at Calmistra and said directly, but are you okay with it? You don't have the qualifications to be a master, right? Even if you go, you can only watch. In the face of a battle between top servants, a mere human magician couldn't help. In this way, instead of going to a dangerous place, it was better to stay here and wait for the result. It was safer. However, Calmephala didn't compromise. How can we let things go like this? Calmephala bit his fingernails and murmured, if we can't get results, then Chaldea's 8 achievements will be finished. In order to lay the foundation for this battle, not only did Chaldea recruit talents from the General Society, but also from the Magic Association. They found 38 masters from famous families to participate in this battle. Right now, it was unknown whether the 38 masters were still alive or not. The Magic Association would definitely not let this matter rest. If the battle failed again, then Calmephala's responsibility would definitely be magnified infinitely by the Magic Association. It was not impossible that he would be removed from his position. Coupled with the failure of humanity's foundation, there was no future for humanity. With Calmephala's worrisome personality, it was naturally impossible for her to sit still. This made Renaud slightly to look at Calmephala. I didn't expect you to be so responsible. Renaud curled his lips as he spoke. It's none of your business. Calmephala immediately glared back. Seeing that the two rivals were about to quarrel, Mon Nua hurriedly spoke. So, where is Serena? If they want to deal with Serena, they naturally have to find her hiding place. Well, Townsend was about to answer, but Renaud took the opportunity to answer. If I'm not wrong, Serena should be there, right? Renaud interrupted Townsend's speech and pointed in a direction. Everyone suddenly looked in the direction Renaud pointed. Then, everyone saw it. The direction Renaud pointed was a mountain. There was a temple there, exuding a long and vicissitude aura. Oh, Townsend was a little surprised. How can you be so sure that Serena is there? It's very simple. Renaud turned his head and looked at the mountain. He looked at the deep mountain that Renaud had seen once when he had just met up with Calmephala. Then, Renaud said so. Ever since the Lingzi moved to this town and was attacked by Aidher, I've already vaguely felt a chill down my spine from that mountain. Renaud didn't know why he felt this way, but Renaud was sure. That feeling is exactly the same as the feeling Professor Lev gave me. Renaud didn't say this out loud. However, since he had this feeling and understood this point, Reynolds had roughly guessed the truth of some of the singularities. It was not until he learned from Townsend about the singularities and what happened after that Reynolds confirmed his conjecture. In light of this, I think that Serena, who holds the holy grail that caused the singularity to appear, is most likely in that mountain. Renaud asserted, as long as we go to that mountain, the final scene of the Holy Grail War will be played out. Such an assertion made Mano and Calmephala startled, but also made Townsend's mouth curl up. It seems that not only are you talented and smart, but even your intuition and eyesight are very sharp. Townsend first praised, then nodded in affirmation. Yes, Serena is in that mountain, and the magic ritual of the Holy Grail War is also in a huge hole in that mountain. In other words, that mountain was the source of the Holy Grail War ritual. Then let's go. Renaud gave this order and then looked at the mountain again. Under the dark sky, the mountain that exuded an ancient aura was extremely gloomy. It was like a beast with its mouth wide open, ready to devour its prey. If Cuchulainn, as Townsend, was a legendary hero that even children knew of, then Essel was truly a nobody. At least until 2018 AD. Even if Ethel announced his real name to the world, no one would be able to find his name from the legends and myths of the past. The reason was simple. Ethel was not a heroic spirit from the past, but a heroic spirit from the future. Originally, the so-called seat of heroic spirits had no concept of time. Whether it was the past, present, or future, as long as one had enough capital to become a hero, then one would be recorded in the seat and become a heroic spirit. Since that was the case, it was only natural that no one in this era would recognize Essel. Therefore, if one had to call Ethel by his real name, then Nameless would be more realistic. Chapter 600. A nameless hero from the future that no one knew about. That was probably the best way to describe Essel. Although, for me, as long as I have the means to complete the mission, it doesn't matter whether I have a name or not. With that thought in mind, Essel stood facing the wind and looked into the distance. The location was deep in the mountains that looked like a giant beast that could devour people. The location was a temple located in the mountains. Essel stood at the top of the temple and looked a few kilometers away with his clairvoyant skill. There, the expected enemies were coming this way. There was a girl wearing an inappropriate aristocratic costume and looked a little anxious. There was a sage holding a wooden staff with a disgusting, frivolous face. There was a subservient holding a shield with an incredible creature standing on his shoulder. There was a boy who looked weak, but his eyes were constantly flashing with brilliance that could not be underestimated. The group of 4 was rushing this way. Sure enough, they came. Assel's tone was full of unpredictability. Ever since he was defeated, Assel had been waiting for him here. Since the rest of the servants have been defeated, it's only a matter of time before they come to challenge me. So, instead of launching an attack, it was better to wait here for the enemy to come to him. Anyway, no matter what, as long as the enemy came close, it would be advantageous for him to occupy a commanding position and monitor the surroundings several kilometers. For this reason, Essel deliberately destroyed the sewers around the mountains so that Renaud and his group could not approach from the underground like last time. This time, red magic burst out of Assel's hand and formed a black iron bow. He held it tightly in his hand. The moment Essel held the bow, Renaud and his group approached the mountain. 2 servants immediately reacted. Enemy detected. Mano immediately tensed up and raised a shield. So it was Essel who launched the attack first? Townsend smiled disdainfully, as if he knew Assel's style, but his grip on the wooden staff tightened. The opponent is an archer, so it's not a problem to become like this. Kelmephala seemed to be mentally prepared to be targeted. Then, Reynolds pulled himself together and pulled Foe off of Mano's shoulder, throwing her onto Kelmephala's body. Soon after, he looked in the direction of the deep mountains and revealed a smile. Let's follow the plan and nullify Essayer's attack. Reynolds' words made everyone around him laugh along with him. Then, the surging magic power bloomed around them. What? Assel, who was about to shoot, suddenly narrowed his eyes. He saw that within the range of his all-seeing eyes, there was a sudden change in the movements of Reynolds and his group that were rushing over. This is a secret technique. Look carefully. Townsend shouted as he raised the wooden staff in his hand. After spinning it for a while, he heavily knocked it on the ground. Along with a dang sound, a rune flickering with light appeared on the ground that was struck by the wooden staff. That was the rune script, which could replace the effects of spells and magic arrays. Magic could be activated by simply inscribing it. It originated from the mysteries of Northern Europe. Townsend didn't spend any time to complete the rune script and activate the magic. The next second, the ground that was struck by the wooden staff suddenly protruded and thick roots drilled out. As a warrior who inherited the magic of rune, Cuchulainn was often called the forest sage when he was a magician. Although there were many types of magic in runes, and through the flexible use of different runes, Townsend could achieve various and powerful effects, such as magic power, clairvoyance, and other skills, and even raising one of the ability parameters to the highest level, but they had the disadvantage that they couldn't be used at the same time. Furthermore, due to his personality, Townsend was more inclined to attack actively. Now, Townsend displayed his aggressive side. Thick roots drilled out of the ground and extended towards the deep mountains like a bridge. Reynolds and his group were sitting at the front of the roots. Following the gaze of the roots, they were approaching the deep mountains at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, the distance of nearly a kilometer was eliminated. Don't even think about it. Seeing that the enemy was closing in on him in an unexpected way, Assel didn't even have a chance to kite him. Without hesitation, he knocked an arrow on the bowstring and aimed at the enemy. However, since Reynolds decided to attack in this way, he naturally wouldn't give Assel a chance to snipe him. Therefore, even though the sewers couldn't be used, Reynolds still secretly sent his tamed demons here. Now was the time for these tamed demons to come into play. Bang! Just as Assel's arrow was about to break through the air, the ground around the temple also burst open. Many gigantic demonic ants crawled out from the ground. Just as Assel's expression changed, the demonic ants began to move. It was as if they had turned into turrets. They didn't charge at Assel, but instead, they carried huge rocks and used their monstrous strength that was comparable to that of a superior tamed demon to throw the rocks one by one. As a result, the rain of stones covered the sky and covered Assel. All you can do is play some useless tricks. Assel leaped up and avoided the incoming projectiles. He spun his body and kicked out fiercely. He was ready to kick away a piece of rock that was flying towards his door. But Assel didn't notice it at all. On the back of the stone he kicked, an exquisite rune suddenly lit up. When Assel noticed it, it was already too late. Boom! The sound of an explosion resounded. The rock engraved with runes exploded like a bomb and turned into a billowing heat wave that covered Assel. In the dark mountain, the red flames were like waves. Layer by layer, they surged above the temple and illuminated the surroundings. The surrounding forest was blown by the hot wind. Not only were the trees swaying, but the fragile leaves also quickly withered and fell to the ground. Assel appeared from the fire wave. His body was emitting some black smoke. He fell to the ground in a sorry state. TSK. Although the damage he received wasn't high, it still affected him. Assel couldn't help but be speechless. Then, the voice of the culprit appeared. The black bow in his hand had long disappeared, and in its place was a black and white dagger that looked like a Tai Chi symbol. The dagger cut off the two demonic ants that were holding him tightly. In front of Assel, there was a mirror-like, transparent shield with 6 petals. Regardless of the reactions of the others, Reynolds could only smile bitterly in his heart. So, there's a shield, after all. As an archer, if he could project a melee weapon, it wouldn't be strange for him to project a shield. Because of this, Renaud didn't hesitate to use magic to increase the power of Townsend's magic in an attempt to take down Assel in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, the accuracy of the projection was unimaginably high, and the projected weapons were all extremely sturdy. Unlike other magicians, the weapons created by projection magic would be quite fragile due to lack of imagination and other factors, and would break at the touch. From this point of view, Assel was indeed a heroic spirit that only existed in myths and legends. Of course, Reynolds didn't realize that what he did could bring such a big threat to the servants, which was already rare and precious. You guys almost succeeded. Assel stood up with a heavy face, but he didn't look at Townsend's direction. Instead, he stared at Renaud. So that's the difference between having a master and not having one. Clearly, Assel had realized it. Here, the most difficult thing to deal with isn't the hound guarding the door, nor is it the girl holding that thorny shield. It's you. Assel's eyes released a murderous aura. Senpai. Ma Nuo immediately jumped in front of Reynolds as if he had been provoked. His face was full of vigilance. Your opponent is me, don't get it wrong. Townsend also stood in front of Mano and looked at Assel with a provocative look. Even Camervilla was glaring at Essel with hostility, as if warning him. And the more they acted like this, the more Assel valued Renaud. It seems that the key this time is not someone else, but you, unknown master. Assel said calmly. In that case, come here. Come here and see if you have the ability to save this era. Leaving these words behind, Assel did not launch another attack. Instead, his body turned into light particles and disappeared. Seeing this, everyone frowned. He realized that he can't win this game alone, so he decisively retreated. Calmephala understood. He's as smart as always, so annoying. Townsend was a little unhappy. Senpai, Mano also looked at Renaud. Under everyone's gaze, Renaud shrugged. Although I want to deal with Assel first, and then focus on Serena, the opponent is smarter than I thought. He probably saw through our purpose and raised his vigilance. Next, we can only deal with Serena and Assel at the same time. This wasn't a situation that could be brushed off with a smile. It's just that I didn't plan to leave a way out for myself. Renaud looked at the direction that gave him a creepy feeling. There was only one thing left to do. That was to attack the root of the problem. The Big Hollow. It was a huge cave located deep in the mountain called Yuanzhong Mountain. As the name suggested, it was a huge hollow, quite spacious. After Assel's retreat, Renaud and his men arrived at the tunnel leading to the Big Hollow after a long journey. We're finally here. Chapter 602. As soon as he saw the spacious cave, Reynolds lay on the ground as if he was burned out. He looked like he had nothing left to live for. Hey, it's only a 20-minute journey. You walk so slowly and you're so tired. Isn't your stamina a little too weak? Looking at Reynolds, Townsend was a little dumbfounded and speechless. What do you mean by slow? It's not that easy to keep up with you servants. Reynolds fiercely retorted. One must know that the Big Hole was located in the inner part of the Yuanzhong Mountain. If one wanted to find the passage to the Big Hole, they would have to go through a long mountain path. Of course, it was not a short path for Reynolds. In fact, it was not a particularly unacceptable distance and consumption. This made Townsend scratch his head and spread his hands. Is this the price of talent? You have an outstanding mind and magic talent, but your stamina is taken away. If my master saw this, she wouldn't be able to take it, right? Townsend's words did not cause a reaction from Reynolds, but from Mano. Mr. Cuchiolin's master is the master of the Shadow Kingdom, the queen of witches who can even kill gods, right? Mano asked. Townsend was not too interested in this. Forget about the honorifics. I'm not used to that, so just call me Townsend. Don't call me by my real name. Townsend said, then curled his lips and smiled. That's right. Compared to me, my master is really strong. There are not many in the world who can compare to her. The person who trained Ulster's strongest warrior, Cuchiolin, was naturally not an ordinary person. She lived in the Shadow Kingdom, one of the Celtic wonderlands. She was known as the Queen of the Underworld who accepted the dead and souls. She was also a talented teacher who had trained many of her disciples to become warriors or magicians. She had also trained many famous heroes in history as a teacher. She had combat skills that allowed her to step into the realm of the gods, and she also had magic tricks that even many gods could not touch. She was clearly in a human body, but she stepped into the realm of the gods as a human body and thus killed countless undead, humans, and even gods. Thanks to this great witch was cursed for the rest of her life. Unable to die, she would live forever in the country of shadow. Unless the world was destroyed, she would never be able to find peace. She was one of the most famous figures in Celtic mythology, the eternal queen and lord of the otherworld, Skaha. Someone who can teach Mr. Ku. Townsend? Mano asked curiously. What kind of person is she? How do I put it? Townsend scratched his head in confusion, as if he did not know how to describe it. After a while, he said, she is not only terrifyingly strong, but she can also see through the cause and effect of everything in the world. She is a sage who never talks about it. Compared to us disciples, her talent is of the highest level, so she can easily see through the quality, temperament, and ability of others. She is very fond of talent. Because of this, Skaha had many disciples, and each of them was overflowing with talent. They were all taught by her to be indomitable heroes. My master's greatest wish is to train someone who can kill her and free herself from the curse of immortality. Unfortunately, no one has been able to do it until now. So, she is probably still alive in the Shadow Kingdom. If you have the chance to go there, you might be able to see her. Townsend's irresponsible words made Mon Nua speechless on the spot. Kelmephala even spoke out. As early as the Gods' era, the Shadow Kingdom was no longer connected to the modern world. In the modern world where mysticism is extremely rare, there is no way to go there. Even if it is possible to transfer the soul seed, it is unknown whether it can be done. Even if it can be done, no idiot would go there. After all, the Shadow Kingdom was a kingdom of the dead. If a living person entered it, the chance of survival was less than 1 in 10,000. If one wanted to go there, it was no different from seeking death. However, being able to survive, there is only the beginning. Otherwise, you won't even have the qualifications to receive my master's guidance. Townsend said so casually, then looked at Reynolds, who was still lying on the ground, too tired to get up. He grinned and laughed. However, Master might be able to do it. If you have the time, go and try. Seeing a rare talent like you being so useless with my master's personality, she will definitely train you to the point that she won't even give you time to sleep. You will be reborn. These words made Reynolds tremble a little. If it was to practice magic, then so be it. But if it was to train his body, then he would definitely refuse. However, why did he have a feeling that this might really happen in the future? This must be an illusion. I'll send my tamed demons to check out the situation in the big hole first. Reynolds immediately changed the topic and prepared to summon his tamed demons. However, this time, Townsend stopped Reynolds. Don't waste your mana. This method can be used to deal with Essel, but it won't work on Serena. Townsend had fought with Serena once, and even took a blow from Serena's relic. In the end, he was lucky enough to survive. After taking a blow from that relic, no matter who it is, they will be able to recognize Serena's true identity, right? Townsend said so in the beginning. Therefore, Renaud and the others had already learned of Serena's real name from Townsend, and they were stunned for a long time. If Serena was really that person, then sending the tamed demons in would be a waste of mana. Therefore, let's just attack. Townsend suggested the most direct and violent method. There's no other way. Reynolds patted the dirt off his body and stood up. Then let's attack. Thus, under Reynolds' command, everyone rushed into the big hole. Finally, they arrived at the unimaginably spacious belly of the mountain. Here, the most ferocious existence had been waiting for them for a long time. Ugh, liar! As soon as they entered the big hole and saw Serena's body, Mano and Kelmephala snorted at the same time. Umph! Townsend also gripped his staff tightly, as if he was facing a great enemy. Reynolds took a deep breath and suppressed the cold sweat that was about to break out. All of this was because the other party had released a shocking amount of magic power that could crush everything. Is she here? Following such a light and cold voice, the biggest enemy in this singularity walked with powerful steps and appeared in front of everyone. Chapter 603. I want you to investigate something. Near the border between the human world and the demon world, there's a village called Hope Village. I want you to investigate the demon attack that happened about 12 years ago. Wait a moment, Your Majesty. Emosia was stunned for a moment. Impossible, Your Majesty. Our demon race hasn't had any communication with the human race for almost 100 years. Even the business has stopped as early as 80 years ago. Moreover, the border is heavily guarded. It's impossible for the demon race to attack the human race. Yes, I also find it strange. Reynolds sat on a chair and crossed his right leg over his left leg. Then, he crossed his fingers and put his arm on his leg, revealing a very distressed expression. I've already banned all contact between demons and humans, so I suspect that there's an inside story behind this. I have some things to deal with recently, so I'll have to trouble you to make a trip. Understood. Sierra raised his right hand and pointed at the magic array on the wall behind him. Your Majesty, this is? Oh, you're interested? Reynolds's eyes lit up, as if he had found a soulmate. This is Hope. Hope! Reynolds stroked the non-existent beard on his chin like an old man. Sierra, how old are you? Should be 90. Humans have an advantage in terms of intelligence. Beasts, on the other hand, have an advantage in terms of physical strength and numbers. Do you know what the advantage of demons is? Sierra shook his head. If I'm not wrong, I'm almost 200 years old this year. Sierra's heart was greatly shaken. The advantage of demons is their savagery. It's different from what you usually feel. Because we're ferocious, we have an extremely high survivability. But because of that, our population has always been on the verge of extinction. More than 150 years ago, I used a secret method to seal most of the negative factors in the genes of the demons. That's why the demons you see now exist. Reynolds's words seemed to have overturned all of Sierra's understanding of demons. There's another point, and that's the eternal night lineage of demons. The eternal night lineage generally has a long lifespan. So far, there aren't many eternal night lineages left. I'm one of them. Haha, in the eternal night lineage, I'm still not an adult. Your Majesty, why are you telling me such important information? Because I hope you can help me with something. Sierra revealed a somewhat vexed expression. If I'm not wrong, there will be a great war in the near future. I hope you can protect this academy and my dear students for me. Although I haven't taught them anything yet, I feel very relaxed just looking at them. Also, you must protect this magic array. You must protect it at all costs. This is the starting point of Hope. This subordinate understands. Go, Hopung Village. The secrets there will determine the future of the three realms. And while after Sierra left, Reynolds just silently raised his head and gazed at the stars in the sky. Is it going to start? Pa! Pa! Reynolds patted his cheeks twice, trying to change his mood. As expected, I can't be serious. Go to sleep, go. After closing the door, Reynolds removed the seal on the room. After all, this was the Demon King's secret. I'll buy. You're drooling all over the floor again. The night in Mengshu Magic Academy was still very quiet. There were no noises from the students, nor were there any shouts from the peddlers. The only sounds were the swaying of the grass and the squeaking of the insects hidden in the fields. Before going to sleep, Reynolds specially left a gap in the only window on the wall. The air that had cooled down during the day passed through the gap, bringing a chill. No, don't eat me. Abai's enlarged body was enough to occupy half of the entire room. After many years of observation by Reynolds, Abai was an oddball among the emotional bunnies. Others were quiet when they slept, but Abai was indeed like a dead pig. Not to mention drooling. Sometimes it would even roll around like a salted fish, directly turning over and pressing Reynolds, who was sleeping on its back directly under its body. Thinking about suddenly having a thing that could be counted by tons on the body while sleeping, that feeling was really indescribable. However, it was still okay today. It wasn't that exaggerated. It was just that Abai had a dream about food and mistook Reynolds for something delicious. It kept licking from there, and Reynolds had a bad nightmare because of it. Achoo! The faint coldness made Reynolds impatiently wake up from his sleep. Looking at Abai, who was licking him, Reynolds was completely speechless. He didn't find this strange after seeing so many of these things. Wah! Reynolds opened his arms and stretched his body as far as possible, forming a big shape to stretch his back. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. If he went back to sleep, he would have slept enough during the day. After a mental struggle, Reynolds decided to go out for a walk. The Dream Magic Academy was very big. In order to let the students learn better magic, they had specially built a place like the magic practice field for the students to practice magic. Maybe it was because Reynolds hadn't been to this place yet. At this moment, he suddenly wanted to visit this place on a whim. He heard that there was a stone statue of the current king here. I'm so hungry. Every time he woke up, Reynolds would feel hungry, and his stomach would always unconsciously bulge. Food. Where can I find food? I guess there's no place open at this time. While thinking about this, Reynolds had already walked to the magic practice field. Suddenly, bang! A loud noise came from the practice field, and sand flew all over the sky. The practice field was circular and open air, a bit like the Colosseum. Therefore, there was no shelter, and the sand directly turned Reynolds into a small sandman. Ah, who did this? Of course, this was the first reaction of almost everyone, but then Reynolds reacted. It's so late. Why are there still people? Reynolds sneaked into the practice field, wanting to peek at who made him all black. The sky was still very dark. In the middle of the training field, there was a round, dark green fighting ring with a radius of about 50 meters. On the fighting ring, there was a very bright golden color dancing in the air. The swishing sound of cutting was somewhat ear-piercing, and there was also a dazzling, silvery white color. The nimble figure constantly shuttled back and forth on the fighting ring. Sometimes, there was a trace of a smile in the corner of the mouth. It was simply like a fairy in the night sky, dancing up and down gracefully. Chapter 604. Avina, why are you here? Reynolds suddenly thought of what Hanabi had said. He looked at the girl in front of him, who was practicing. The bricks she passed were obviously darker in color than the other bricks. Judging by the amount of sweat she was sweating, she had probably been practicing for a long time. She's so serious. Reynolds couldn't help but think as he looked at Avina's slightly sharp gaze and her slightly biting lips. Sigh. Renaud sighed and shook his head. Sigh. Who told me to be so kind? Renaud quietly walked forward and carefully observed Iwena's movements from there. Avina gave herself the position of a magic swordsman. Everyone in the army had to give themselves a clear position. Just like Mosia, he thought that his strengths were in explosive power and speed, so he gave himself the position of a magic assassin. Avina, on the other hand, thought that her strengths were in endurance and fighting techniques, so she gave herself the position of a magic swordsman. Wrong. You should increase the output of magic here. The sudden notification gave Avina a fright. She immediately let out a "ah," and the rapier in her hand fell to the ground. She slowly turned her head and found that it was actually her class teacher behind her. So it's you. After saying that, she bent down to pick up the rapier on the ground. Looks like you still can't do it. A swordsman should press forward with indomitable will. Although your movements just now looked delicate, it actually didn't have much effect. Furthermore, large movements will bring a lot of unnecessary movements. Plus, when you're frightened, the rapier fell from your hand. If I knew that the rapier was your second life, sigh, I don't know what your previous teacher taught you. Reynolds' sudden complaints actually made Avina a little angry. No matter what, it's none of your business. After picking up the rapier, Avina used her sleeves to gently wipe the blade. Then, she turned around and prepared to leave. Wait a minute. I'm still your class teacher. Give me some face, okay? Avina, who just walked to the door, suddenly stopped. She turned around and glanced at Reynolds. Just as she was about to say something, Reynolds suddenly stopped her. How about it? Do you want to go up and train? Reynolds' sudden request was not made on a whim. On the contrary, it was a plan made after careful consideration. Perhaps this practice would affect Reynolds' attitude. How about this? I'm a teacher after all, so I'll go easy on you. As long as you can touch my clothes, you win. Huh? Avina doubted what she had heard. Who do you think I am? The two of them walked to the center of the ring, with a distance of about 30 meters between them. In a normal match, there would be many referees and spectators, but since it was nighttime, both men and women were hugging unknown soft objects, little bears and dolls. Don't think too much. It made sense for her to be so cold and cheerless while sleeping. Hey, don't you think it's boring to just compare notes? What do you want? Why don't we make a bet? Iwena was tempted when she heard that. Hee. If I win, I'll make him bark on the floor like a dog. Ahem. That's a good suggestion. If I win, you have to bark twice like a dog. Sure. If I win, I hope you can treat me better. How about it? Sure. After this little interlude, Avina focused on her opponent. His posture is like a plate of loose sand, his magic aura is very weak, his eyes show a trace of fatigue, and his stomach is still growling. It's full of flaws. After a round of observation, Avina found that Reynolds did not intend to make the first move. He was just standing there in a daze, his hand covering his mouth as he yawned. Thus, she decided to make the first move. Condensed, blazing heat transform into endless flames, sometimes ferocious, swallowing the sky and destroying the sun, sometimes cold as ice, covering the sky and the sun. Explode, icy flame spike. After slowly chanting the incantation, Avina began to mobilize the magic power within her body. Gradually, large amounts of light blue magic particles in the air slowly gathered in front of Avina. An enormous blue ice spike that was constantly throbbing like a flame was forming in front of Reynolds. Avina, let me tell you, if you were on the battlefield now with your current incantation speed, you would have died 10 times over. While she was surprised, Avina also waved her hand and shot out the newly formed icicles. The ice spike's flying speed was very fast, about half a meter long. It was not the type that could not be dodged, but Reynolds still stood there with no intention of dodging. No wonder you're one of the top students among your peers. You should be testing me with this level of skill, right? After saying that, Reynolds casually waved his hand, and a strong gust of wind knocked the flying ice spike to the ground. The cracking sounds were pleasant to the ear, but to Avina, it was something inconceivable. How did you do that? Sigh, who knows? Maybe it broke because of my handsomeness. Mouth area. You have the cheek to say that. Avina raised the silver rapier in her right hand, making it parallel to the front of her line of sight. Fluttering silver feathers, entrusted with the thoughts of the heart. The other side of dreams will always be sought. Spread your wings, celestial wings. Strings of incantations continuously absorb the wind particles in the air, transforming them into silvery white fluffy feathers that floated around Avina. A pair of gigantic silvery white wings spread open behind her back, holy and pure. Wait, this is a wind attribute magic. How can it be so powerful? While sighing, Avina had already raised her sword and rushed forward. With the support of the celestial wings, Avina's speed, defense, and attack were all greatly increased. She even left behind 1 or 2 afterimages in the arena. It was a pity that every time Avina attacked, Reynolds would easily dodge. Furthermore, Reynolds purposely gave Avina the illusion that he was almost hit. Damn it, I'm so close to hitting him every time. He's as nimble as a mouse. Many long drawn-out battles were obviously a competition of endurance. Of course, the premise was that both parties were equally matched. Avina's physical strength was already somewhat overdrawn. Her pink cheeks were dyed red by adrenaline, and she was panting heavily. It was obvious that her body had lost a lot of energy. No, if this continues, I will lose without a doubt. I can only. Avina stopped breathing deeply and slowly closed her eyes. The magic particles in her body also calmed down a lot. Chapter 605. Since you're still a teacher, let me remind you that the spell I'm about to use is extremely dangerous. Because I've just learned it, even I can't control my strength well. If it hits you, even if you don't die, you'll lose a layer of skin. I advise you to admit defeat now. After Reynolds heard this, he immediately laughed out loud. First, it's obvious that I have the upper hand now. Second, I can already feel that the mana in your body is showing signs of dissipating. Third, I will not lose, no matter who it is. Very good. Tessia took a deep breath. The great Tao of heaven and earth, all living things coexist. The cycle of reincarnation is endless. Life and death depend on each other. Greed is the first in human nature. Purify all living things. Destroy the giant. Tessia extracted all the mana in her body into her right hand. She then chanted an incantation into her fist, which emitted a bright red light. Tessia viciously punched the ground. Suddenly, the red light flowed through the cracks in the ground and into the arena. A strong tremor swept through the entire training ground. Analyze. At this moment, a small magic array appeared in Reynolds' eyes. It kept rotating in his pupils. The arrangement of the incantation and words. Hey, you can't do this. All right, this move is not bad, but it's useless against me. After the violent tremor, a huge red hand made of magma broke out of the ground. Then, another hand stretched out. Using your own mana as a medium, fire magic particles are injected into the ground to form magma. Reynolds looked at the magma giant that was crawling out of the ground and could not help but shake his head. I'm convinced. Reynolds gently raised his right hand and placed his thumb on top of his middle finger. With a snap, he snapped his fingers. Eliminate. As if disturbed, the magma giant's body suddenly trembled. The bright red magma turned into pieces of solidified stone and then shattered into powder. Tessia, I don't want to criticize you, but if you use such a large-scale spell in such a place, not only will you disturb the residents, but if you destroy the arena, what will I do if the principal deducts my salary? Seeing the C-rank magma giant that she had just spent all her mana to summon disappear without a trace, Tessia's mind suddenly became blank. How can this be? The fighting arena had also been destroyed by the appearance of the lava giant. A strong sense of loss welled up in his heart. Don't worry, I will compensate you, Tizia said weakly. You're as poor as I am, and you still want to compensate me? After saying that, Tizia stood up and slowly walked out of the arena. Mana exhaustion would cause the body to temporarily lose all its functions. Suddenly, her legs gave way and she fell forward. Before she lost consciousness, she only remembered a blurry figure catching her and saying, I really don't know what to do with you. Sob, 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 my head is spinning. Slowly opening his eyes, the first thing that entered his eyes was the sunlight that shone through the door and windows into the room. His body was surrounded by a soft and smooth texture, which was very comfortable. This is a dormitory? Avina sat up shakily from the bed, her pair of delicate feet hanging above the floor. There were still traces of tears in the corners of her eyes. Obviously, she had a very comfortable dream. Avina tried hard to recall what happened last night. Oh, right, it's that idiot. The face of a middle-aged man with a wretched appearance appeared in Avina's mind. Blossom? From the other side of the blanket came a series of rubbing sounds. Avina looked at the side of the bed and saw that it was her best friend of many years, 3000 Blossom. Blossom seemed to have felt something and woke up as well. Avina, it's great that you're fine. Blossom saw that Avina had woken up as healthy as usual and immediately rushed over to Avina. She rested her chin on Avina's right shoulder and naturally wrapped her arms around Avina. The sudden warmth warmed Avina's heart, but then she thought of something and whispered to Blossom. Blossom, let me tell you that Reynolds is a big liar, a big pig head, an idiot. What's wrong, Avina? Are you still asleep? Last night, after Teacher Reynolds carried you back, he specifically told me to let you drink more hot water. How did you become a big pig head? Blossom gently pressed her forehead against Avina's. After making sure that she didn't have a fever, she was relieved. What? He brought me back, and he even carried me? Avina shouted. Do you know what he did? Last night, when I was sparring with him in the practice field, all the magic I used didn't work on him. And Magma Giant, that's a C-grade magic. Normal people can't possibly block it, but he just snapped his fingers and made my Magma Giant disappear. How is that possible? He definitely cheated. Oh, you mean that? Avina put her right index finger on her temple and tilted her head. Perhaps it was because she often did it unintentionally, but it was an extremely cute gesture. I heard from the principal and the head of teaching that Teacher Reynolds can release magic without chanting a spell. What? That's impossible. I've never heard of such a thing. Aina suddenly realized that if it was really as Hanako said, Reynolds could release magic without chanting an incantation, then she might have provoked a very troublesome and dangerous person. No, that's impossible. He must have used some method to deceive everyone. Avina thought so. Thus, Avina thought of many ways, and finally, she thought of a method that she thought would work. TSK, you can't trap a wolf without risking your child. I'm going for broke. Avina steeled her heart and took out the only meal ticket that the canteen provided to the outstanding students every month. She then placed it outside Reynolds' dormitory door, knocked on the door, and quickly ran away. What happened after, I'm sure everyone can guess. HM? Who dropped this super luxurious meal ticket? No, such a valuable item must be returned to its rightful owner. Then, Reynolds thought carefully and combined it with the situation in his stomach. Yay, Tommy! After Reynolds ran far away, suddenly, a head popped out from a corner that wasn't easy to spot. Obviously, the bright golden hair had exposed her identity. Just you wait, this time I'm not going to expose your true identity. Avina sneaked into Reynolds' room and saw that it was a room that couldn't be more normal. The magic formation in the room had also been hidden by Reynolds. In the southeast corner of the room, there was a small snoring sound that came out one after another. This gave Avina a big fright. Chapter 606. Oh, it's just a rabbit. Under normal circumstances, Albai would always maintain a body the size of 2 fists because it was better for sleeping. Looking at how it was hugging a carrot as a pillow, it probably didn't even notice that someone had sneaked into the room. There must be some secret hidden somewhere. AI Wayna narrowed her eyes and looked around. She wanted to see if there were any confidential documents or the like. That's not right. That's not how it's written in the novel. Unfortunately, up until now, Avina hadn't found the confidential documents she had guessed. Woo-woo. Avina made up her mind again. There's no other way. I'm going all out. Avina touched her pocket and took out a miniature magic camera crystal. It took her a few months of savings to buy it. That's just right. After considering many things, Avina decided to put it in an inconspicuous corner. Hee, I'll kill you. Hey, Huakai, come here. Let me show you something fun. What's wrong, Avina? Look at your wretched expression. Did you do something bad? Ah, how is that possible? Come here. Oh, I'm coming. Huakai had just finished bathing, and her face was still faintly red. Her short purple hair flowed down her cheeks to her collarbone, and when it reached a certain amount, it dripped down. At that moment, she looked very delicate and cute. Look. Avina took out a silver-white crystal the size of a palm. In the middle of it was something like an eyeball with a golden rim. Is this a camera crystal? Or is it the surveillance type? What did you do? Huakai suddenly had a bad premonition. Last night, I sent that idiot away with a super luxurious meal ticket and then snuck in. Here, this is the entire scene of him in the room from last night to this afternoon. You mean Teacher Reynolds? Huakai hurriedly said, Avina, this isn't very good. Huakai, your way of thinking isn't quite right. As she spoke, Avina had already moved a machine that could be used to play the images inside the crystal. If he's really fine, that would be the best. But if there's something unspeakable, then we'll have done a great deed. This is still a little inappropriate. There's a chance. Avina had grown up with Huakai, and they knew each other's personalities very well. Clearly, Huakai's stuttering was enough to show that she was beginning to waver. AI Wayna grabbed Blossom's wrist and pulled her over. During the process, Blossom only resisted for a moment, which was exactly what AI Wayna thought was a masochist. However, the actual situation in Huakai's room was not like that. Perhaps the act of peeking was more often a reflection of one's true inner thoughts. In terms of the room distribution, Avina and Huakai shared a room. Avina's room was more simple, and the appliances were more commoner. Although Huakai's room was similar to Avina's, most of the furniture was pink and tender like a young girl's. The beds were placed close to each other, which was more conducive to the frequent occurrence of bedding incidents. It's starting. The two of them put the beds together, then turned off the lights and covered themselves with the quilt. Looking at their excited expressions, it felt like they were watching a horror movie. I'm back. The scene started with Reynolds pushing the door open. The crystal did not let down the few months of pocket money that Avina had scrimped and saved. Not to mention the quality of the image. Even the color was 100% restored, and it felt very realistic. After Reynolds pushed the door open, he directly picked up Abai, who was sleeping in the corner. Meow, F***. I just had a good dream, and you woke me up. Reynolds stroked Abai as he said, Abai, I just picked up a super luxurious meal ticket, and it's the buffet type. What? Avina saw this and immediately panicked. She quickly stood up and touched the pocket of her school uniform. Damn, I gave it to the wrong person. Oh, my super luxurious buffet meal ticket. Flower Bloom. AI Wayna looked at Flower Bloom pitifully like a kitten. Okay, I'll give you another one. Thank you, Hua Kai. Avina quickly kissed Hua Kai's cheek. The video played again. Reynolds suddenly let go of Abai's arm, and Abai fell directly to the ground with a plop. Ouch, I fell to my death. What are you doing? Although Abai was angry, it was afraid to show it, for fear that it would become a lab rat for some experiments. At the same time, the video was paused again. I didn't pay much attention to that rabbit at first, but now that I look at it, it's so cute. That idiot is abusing animals. Yeah, the rabbit is so cute. How could he bear to hurt it? Play. I ate a little too much just now, and then I argued with the cafeteria Annie. I told her that it's a buffet, and I can eat until I'm full. In the end, the auntie said that I have Parkinson's disease with my trembling hands. Can't I just hit her a few more times? Sigh, I'm sweating all over. I'm going to take a shower. Avina and Hua Kai were speechless. He actually took my meal ticket to find fault with the Annie? I feel like I've done something wrong. Wait, shower? Shower? The two suddenly realized something, and their faces turned a lot redder. Hua Kai quickly picked up the controller to fast forward, but her face was full of disappointment. She always felt that she would secretly watch it alone when there was no one around. Wait, Avina suddenly felt that something was wrong. Wait a little more, look. As she spoke, she pointed at the screen. Shower, shower. Reynolds happily muttered in a low voice. Oh, right, I almost forgot. Reynolds suddenly realized that he was still in the middle of a middle-aged uncle, and this feeling was very uncomfortable. The difference in vision brought about by the difference in height always felt inexplicably out of place. Transform, he shouted in a somewhat Chinibu manner. A large number of white light spots gathered and gradually surrounded Reynolds, and then suddenly dissipated like leaves blown away by the wind. Reynolds' original appearance was exposed in front of Avina and Hua Kai's eyes. His shoulder-length short hair was slightly curved and hung less than 2 fingers above his shoulders. His sapphire blue eyes emitted a faint light, and it was very seductive like a crystal that had been deposited for thousands of years. His slender fingers, delicate facial features, and tender white skin made it seem like the most perfect form in the depths of their memories had appeared before their eyes. Chapter 607. This is... Both of them felt as if they had been hit in the head with a bat. Their thoughts were in a mess. Wait a minute, is this his real face? Or did he transform? I feel like that middle-aged man is the one who transformed. It's just that he's changed back now. Avina wiped the sweat off her forehead. Tizia, you seem to have discovered something amazing this time. As Tizia stared at the woman in the image, she couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. The more she looked at her, the more she felt as if she had seen her somewhere before. In fact, there was even a hint of sorrow in this sense of familiarity. He looks so familiar. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Avina said, do you feel the same way? Tizia, you feel the same way too? Yes, I often have the same recurring dream at night. It's the kind of war scene where there are many corpses around. In the dream, there seems to be a person who looks very similar to Teacher Reynolds. I just have this feeling. As long as I'm close to him, I feel very safe and warm. Oh, do you like him? Avina's joke suddenly made Avina's face turn very red. Her face was like a ripe apple. It was very tempting. No. That's good. How dare he steal Avina's woman? Oomph. With that, AI Wayna pounced on AI Wayna's body and began her most common trick, tickling. When they were young, this was the trick she used to bully AI Wayna the most. After fooling around for a while, the two of them were naturally tired. Next, they were faced with a very awkward question, whether they should continue watching the video. Shower? This was because Reynolds' room was only a large living room. The toilet was only in a small cubicle. The boundary between the two rooms was a very thin wooden door. Everything that happened inside could be clearly seen from the outside. No, that's against the law. Sigh. Avina sighed. You can read my mind. You know everything I'm thinking. AI Wayna stood up and patted the pink pajamas she was wearing. Then she walked to the video player and took out the camera crystal from it. I'll keep this for now. Oh. Avina nodded subconsciously, then immediately reacted. Wait a minute. Are you trying to peek when there's no one around? This, of course not. Then let me take care of it. After saying that, Avina also stood up to snatch the crystal. Since you were so conflicted, why don't you let me take care of it? Suddenly, a third party's voice inexplicably appeared in this room. It was still the same, but it sounded very familiar. Then, Avina suddenly realized that the camera crystal in her hand had disappeared. The two of them broke out in cold sweat. Could it be? Could it be? She turned around and saw that it was their homeroom teacher come victim, Reynolds. I was wondering why there were remnants of your magic in my room. So it was because of this. Reynolds tossed the camera crystal in his hand upwards. So you want to secretly take pictures? Let me see what you took. Reynolds instantly cast a spell on his eyes to facilitate rapid reading. His eyes stared straight at the eyeball-like thing in the middle for about 5 or 6 seconds. Oh, so you saw something you shouldn't have. Reynolds narrowed his eyes, his chin slightly tilted up, revealing a roguish expression. Hey. Avina began to feel a little nervous. I didn't do it on purpose, okay? I was just thinking about the safety of the school. After all, I've never heard of anyone who can release magic without chanting. Mr. Reynolds, I'm sorry. It's our fault. Avina said guiltily. Reynolds silently glanced at the two of them and finally sighed. Sigh, the nature of this kind of thing is very bad, but forget it. It's fine as long as you don't tell anyone. Really? Really? Reynolds' sudden decision to not pursue the matter surprised the two of them. Why? Because you are my students. Reynolds' answer was somewhat perfunctory, but the specific reason was probably only known to him. But on the other hand, you must protect this secret from me. If you tell anyone, you understand. Got it. Perhaps it was because of this experience, Avina also felt that this homeroom teacher was actually not as hateful as she had imagined. Since you already know, I'll tell you something from the bottom of my heart, Reynolds suddenly said in a serious tone. Reynolds walked in front of AI Wayna and suddenly raised his hand to pull the front of her clothes. Her white and tender collarbone was completely exposed. What? AI Wayna was taken aback by his sudden action. She quickly took a step back and covered her chest with her hands. Her face was flushed with embarrassment. As expected, Reynolds placed his left arm across his abdomen, then placed his right arm on top of it. He held his chin and said slowly, Hey, Avina, what's with that diamond-shaped mark on you? Oh, this is something I have since I was born. How did you know? Avina was very sure that Reynolds knew about the existence of this mark, which was why he directly confirmed it. Nothing. After saying that, Reynolds suddenly waved his hand casually and then dispelled the transformation. The Reynolds who could be called a peerless beauty in the image appeared in front of them, although he was a man. The middle-aged man's body shape was actually very different from Reynolds' body shape. So once he returned to his original appearance, Reynolds always wore a large shirt, which was also a very inconvenient thing. Reynolds sat on the bed wearing a brown shirt that was big enough to fit two of him. Do you know why I don't want to teach you properly? Isn't it because you're lazy? Yes. Reynolds nodded subconsciously. What? Do you know that the peace on the surface of the human world is now coming to an end? The two of them did not understand. What I mean is that soon, the human world may experience a catastrophe. At that time, the ones at the forefront will be you, group of magicians, which means that your lives will face an unprecedented danger. So, you don't teach us properly because you want to protect us? Avina continued the topic. Chapter 608. What disaster? Avina asked. That's none of your business. Reynolds paused for a moment and continued. I've thought about it for a while, and I'll give you 2 choices. Reynolds stretched out his right index finger. The first choice is to live peacefully like you're now. He stretched out his left index finger. The second choice is that I'll teach you seriously, and you'll learn well and die on the battlefield. Two extreme choices were placed in front of the two of them. Avina paused for a moment. Ever since my hometown was invaded by the demons, I've made up my mind. Avina clenched her left index finger. Avina, on the other hand, seemed to be a little hesitant. Teacher, no matter what choice it is, will you be with us? Not necessarily. Just follow your heart. Avina was a little hesitant. She turned to look at the determined Avina, and the latter nodded at her with a rather serious expression. Yes, I've decided. Avina clenched her left index finger. Very good, very good. I respect your decision. From tomorrow onwards, we'll begin high-intensity training. Really? Avina said excitedly. By the way, it's said that the Sacred Sword Dance is about to begin. The Sacred Sword Dance was the most popular competition among all the human competitions held once every 10 years. It wasn't like a ball game. It was a super large-scale magic competition composed entirely of mages. Moreover, the champion would have the opportunity to meet the guardian deity of the human race, the Sacred Sword. If the champion could obtain its approval, then the champion would become the master of the Sacred Sword. After many years of accumulation, this 30-day competition had evolved into the grandest festival of the human race. Because this Sacred Sword Dance took a long time, its scale was huge, and it had a strong symbolic meaning. In order to ensure that the competition was highly enjoyable and had the function of selecting talents, it was generally necessary to have intense regional selection competitions first. Then, the top 3 of each region would gather at the main venue to compete. Although Stigani was the largest city in the vicinity, it wasn't the largest city in the region. The Holy Sword Dance was usually hosted by the largest city in the region. This way, not only could it provide the most perfect facilities and services, it could also provide the largest venue to accommodate the largest audience. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And the host was the human emperor. As I said before, this time, the arena of our Jiedong region is located in the northwest of us. This Jiedong city is also known as Huiqing. Legend has it that the giant dragon once slaughtered here, causing a continuous fire that stretched for thousands of miles. In the end, it was suppressed by the brave with the holy sword. After countless generations of efforts, it finally became the largest city in the Jiedong region, famous for its delicious food. Reynolds stood at the front of the podium of the wave treading forward class, wagging his finger as he spoke. Sigh, I'm really not familiar with the words I memorized last night. It had been many days since the time he had a private chat with Tizia and Avina in the dormitory. Since then, Reynolds began to change his teaching method. Furthermore, he made such a suggestion to Emosia. If we teach the students to work for us, then wouldn't we have more confidence? This was an excuse that even Reynolds didn't believe, but Emosia actually believed in it. This was really surprising. By the way, the matter of Tizia's hometown being massacred by the demons that Reynolds asked Emosia to investigate had already been investigated. The truth was, it was fake. However, the massacring of the village was true, but it wasn't done by the demons. There wasn't any aura of the demons at the scene of the incident. Even though many years had passed, this kind of aura couldn't have completely disappeared. Therefore, according to the deduction of Emosia's profession as an investigator, it was definitely not done by the demons. This time, there will be a total of 7 schools competing for the top 3 places in our Jiedong region. However, to us, there are only 2 schools that are worthy of our attention. They're the local Bai Hua Heavenly Magic Academy and Yao Long Tianxiao Magic Academy. Please remember, our goal is to be number 1. In the past few days, Reynolds had gotten along well with the students. The sudden change in their homeroom teacher also surprised the students. Sai, what's going on? It feels like he's changed into a different person. Yes. Not only is the class very good, but it's also very fun. I feel like a child. Reynolds looked at the name list in his hand and said with a serious face, without a doubt, our school will definitely send out the elite of the elites, Wave Treader. According to the requirements of the competition, we should have a class internal battle to choose 3 contestants. Then, let's start the competition in the afternoon. Who wants to sign up? Teacher, are there no substitutes? No. Generally, there are 3 people in a team on the battlefield. It's impossible to have extra people to help you. Therefore, no matter who enters the final 3, you must take good care of your body. Don't be unable to compete because you're sick. Sigh. Teacher also said that when I was young. Is there anyone who wants to sign up? As for the registration of the contestants, Reynolds gave full authority to Tisa. As for himself, he was only responsible for teaching the class and did not care about anything else. As for the contestants, Reynolds had actually made some guesses. The 2 male students in the class were not particularly strong. One of them was especially good at theory, and the other was especially good at survival in the wild. Therefore, they were excluded. Among the remaining 7 contestants, Tisa and Avina would definitely take up 2 of the spots. As for the last spot, Reynolds had also made some calculations. It should be a girl named Natalia who would obtain it. As the homeroom teacher, Reynolds paid a lot of attention to this girl. Natalia was very quiet in class. She was very quiet and always kept to herself. However, her entrance exam results were very good. Moreover, she was a rare beauty. She had long black hair, black eyes, and even her clothes were all black. She belonged to the type that was especially cold and aloof. What was worth noting was that she was born in a noble family. However, just 12 years ago, her family met with an accident, and since then, her family had fallen into decline and became an orphan. This is very troublesome. Reynolds slowly said as he held Natalia's file. Darkness devours the day, and eternal night will eventually descend. The vengeful spirits buried underground will endlessly roar. Awaken, vengeful spirits. Chapter 609. The battle between Natalia and Avina quickly came to an end. Of course, they both won. Natalia's skill level far surpassed most of her peers, and Avina wasn't doing too bad either. Although her opponent was rather difficult to deal with, she still won easily. Her opponent was Natalia, one of Renault's main targets. Natalia was using an extremely rare type of magic, undead magic. In fact, it was so rare that it could be said to be one of a kind. Undead magic, as its name implied, could summon undead and cast curse-type magic. Undead magic could only be used when paired with a darkness-type physique. Natalia is so strong, but she's a little too cold. Natalia commented as she watched the battle from the side. After she finished chanting the incantation, 2 or 3 dark gray bricks in the training ground began to tremble slightly. Following that, 3 zombie-like creatures the size of an adult crawled out. Their appearances were similar to what was described in most books. They had slightly green skin, slanted heads, and long tongues sticking out of their mouths. Saliva kept dripping down from their mouths. It seemed like they were slightly poisonous. Her opponent was another student in her class. Her name was Ing, and her strength was above average. She was also quite outstanding. The 3 zombies were slightly different from each other. The fat one was holding an axe. It seemed like it had high attack and defense. The skinny one seemed to be quite agile. The last one had sparks coming out of its mouth. It seemed like it knew how to cast simple magic. Tisk, so troublesome. Ing glanced at Natalia from the corner of her eye. However, she discovered that Natalia's eyes were empty, as if she didn't care about her at all. No one has ever looked at me like that since I was young. Damn it, looking down on me just because you're a little strong. Watch me. Wind sword dance, silver sword stabs. A large amount of wind elemental energy gathered and intersected with each other. They instantly stopped mixing and formed hundreds of needles the size of branches floating in the air. Go! After the order was given, all the thin needles rushed towards Natalia. The whooshing sound of the needles breaking through the air was very ear-piercing to the ears of others. The thin needles were so fast that it was difficult to see them with the naked eye. Teacher, who do you think is stronger, Ing or Natalia? Avina tilted her head and asked. Well, I wasn't too sure before, but now I know. Renault purposely kept her in suspense. Let me test you. Who do you think will win? Well, although I'm close to Ing and hope that she wins, looking at the current situation, I think Natalia will win. AI Wayna turned her head and shifted her gaze from Reynolds to the arena. Natalia seemed to be very calm in the face of hundreds of thin thorns. She didn't even look at it. Natalia waved her hand, and the fat zombie slowly stepped forward and used its body to block the thin thorns. Sure enough, the fat zombie's defense was amazing. The thin thorns only left a little white mark on its skin. It was as if a rock had been gently smashed into an ice cube. It was completely useless. Look, up until now, Natalia has already grasped the rhythm of the battle. Ying's skills are very fast, but their power is far from enough. As for Natalia, she has only used one skill so far. Just this skill alone is enough to both attack and defend. Even if she can't win, she can still fight back. It's almost certain that she'll win. Oh, as expected of teacher. Yeah, keep a low profile, keep a low profile. Don't say it out loud. Dark curse, earthbind. As soon as the forward message was spoken, a dark black curse slowly floated out from Natalia's mouth. It then rushed towards Sakura along the bricks. Meanwhile, Sakura was also engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the 3 zombies summoned by Natalia. Although Sakura knew that it was useless to just defeat the puppets, she had to defeat the caster to win some time to breathe. However, the individual strength of the zombies was also quite good, and they could not free themselves to deal with Natalia. The dark curses attached themselves to Ing while she was distracted dealing with the zombies. What's this? Facing the fat zombies' fierce attacks, Ing suddenly realized that she couldn't move at all. She couldn't even shout out the word surrender or help. Wait, that's... The moment the axe swung at her, Ing realized that Natalia was finally looking at her. Wait, why is she looking at me like that? Is she gloating, happy, satisfied? Ing felt like she saw an extremely disgusting expression. Monster, monster, monster. Unfortunately, that was all she could say with all her might. Monster? Sure, I'm a monster. I was, am, and will be a monster in the future. Ha 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 ha. Natalia's words made everyone's hair stand on end. Hey. She really wants to kill her. Reynolds watched from below the stage as the fat zombie continued to swing his axe. Logically speaking, as long as one side didn't admit defeat, the other side had the right to attack. However, the outcome of this match was already obvious. There was no need to attack at all. Is it over? Ing watched as the fat zombie swung the millstone-sized axe at her head. She could almost see what would happen in 3 seconds. Her head would be separated from her body. Enough. As soon as Reynolds yelled, Natalia felt that her connection with the zombies was suddenly cut off. The zombies that had lost control were like puppets without strings, unable to move at all. The fat zombie's movements were also frozen at the moment it raised its axe and swung it backward. The outcome has been decided. Natalia is the winner. Renaud walked onto the stage and dispelled Natalia's binding magic. He then hinted at Avina with his eyes, indicating for her to sending back to rest. Avina instantly understood Renaud's intentions. She walked up to Ing and patted her on the back to comfort her. The selection is now over. Representing our school in the Sacred Sword Dance will be Natalia, Avina, and Natalia. Today's class will end here. Everyone, please go back and rest. Luckily, the students didn't realize the severity of the situation just now. Otherwise, it would have been troublesome. After the students all returned to their dorms, Renaud specially told Avina to remind Ing not to overthink things. What about Natalia? I have to do some brainwashing again. Sometimes, reality and imagination were always at odds with each other. Reynolds had a deep feeling about this. The decorations in a room were different from what Renaud had imagined. In his imagination, Natalia's room should be clean and fragrant, but in reality. Chapter 610. Hey, why is your room so messy? Why are snacks all over the floor? Why are your socks covered with potato chips? And what's this? Reynolds squatted down and picked up something that almost tripped him. What's this? A white, mottled thing appeared in front of him. I say, this isn't your panties, is it? Natalia blinked. Hey, Reynolds threw the panties at her face. Can't you clean it up? Natalia was indifferent. Sigh. Reynolds sighed. You win. Tell me, why did you want to kill Ling? I don't remember that she had any grudges with you. Natalia put down her right hand that was eating potato chips and said slowly, because she bullied me. Hey, who's the bully here? Because she called me a monster. Reynolds carefully recalled the details of that time, and with the things that he had asked Sia to investigate previously, he made a guess. 12 years ago, Natalia's eyes suddenly became fearful. You went out with your family to play, but something happened that caused your parents to leave, and then you were ostracized by your friends. No, to be precise, you subconsciously started to isolate yourself from the outside world. Gradually, you felt that everyone was despising you, betraying you, and even spurning you. So, you wanted to take revenge, right? Natalia was silent, but she still said slowly, My matters are none of her business. Reynolds bent down and stroked Natalia's hair. Don't worry, no one bullied you. I also told Ing that it was caused by your poor control of magic, and she believed me. And Reynolds revealed a very gentle smile. She even asked me to apologize on her behalf. Reynolds stood up and walked to the side. Cough, cough. He intended to imitate Ying's tone at that time. Mr. Reynolds, can you apologize to Natalia for me? That time when I called her a monster, I said it subconsciously. Is that okay? Reynolds thought that his performance was perfect throughout the whole process. It was so vivid that it couldn't be any more vivid. His confident face was directly revealed. How is it? Do you feel better? It seems to be getting worse. All right, enough joking. Reynolds changed into a serious expression. No matter what, I hope that you, Avina, and Natalia will be able to receive my training. As for the others, I will temporarily hand them over to the Dean of Teaching. Is it okay if we win the regional tournament in Jiedong? Natalia thought for a moment and nodded. Very well, then I'll leave first. Reynolds patted his clothes. All right, I'll get Avina and Natalia to help you clean up. After going out, Reynolds silently sorted out Natalia's information in his mind. Is it loneliness caused by childhood trauma? Nook. The next morning, according to the school's requirements and training plan, Reynolds took Natalia, Avina, and Natalia to the designated training location under the condition that no one objected. Carriages could be said to be relatively backward in this era. With the continuous development of magic, there would always be new types of transportation to replace the backward ones. Because it's cheap, idiot. It's only 5 copper coins, damn it. Reynolds was so stingy. The carriage was the kind that was very common. It was a very simple room built of wood, and there was even a slight moldy smell. As for the breed of the horse, there was no need to think that it was so high-end. With the budget approved by the school, Reynolds had already planned to invest most of the funds into food and accommodation. Teacher, where are we going? You'll know in a while. We're already in the wilderness. With this lousy carriage, I'm starting to worry about our upcoming training. The Jiedong region selection, this time, is called the 7 Schools Leap Battle. I've been so busy recently analyzing this team, and so on. I'm almost exhausted. How can I have time to find good transportation for you? Please understand. Oh, you're indeed Teacher Reynolds. You've worked hard. That was the attitude of Avina and Natalia. Teacher, there are no outsiders here, and we're not in class. You could just say that you're going to buy more food. This girl, Natalia, how did you know? You don't know. Our teacher, Reynolds, is famous in the cafeteria at Annie Lou's place. Natalia wiped her nose after saying that, showing a very proud expression. Hey, what's the use of knowing more than others? For breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're the first to arrive and the last to leave every day. The amount of food you eat is enough for 5 people. I don't know why you don't gain weight and are still so good-looking, Natalia said while shaking her right index finger slowly. However, she said the last few words very softly. She's jealous. Who's good-looking? Where, little sister? Reynolds suddenly stuck his head out of the window. It's you. Let me just said that you're very beautiful. Did I? What did you say that? Why didn't I hear it? Even if I did, it's called handsome. After Reynolds said that, he suddenly felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He realized that the other 3 people in the carriage were all staring at him at the same time. It was obviously a little awkward. Forget it. Reynolds immediately removed his uncle's disguise and revealed his original appearance. Wow! Avina directly cried out. Oomph. Natalia turned her head, but her little eyes still peeked here from time to time. On Natalia's side, it was a little strange. This mysterious pressure. What is it? Natalia grabbed her collar with both hands and suddenly looked a little uncomfortable. Ha ha! She took deep breaths in an attempt to calm herself down. What's the matter, Natalia? Are you all right? Avina saw that Natalia was suddenly in pain and hurriedly went up to her to calm her down. What? What should I do? Natalia was at her wit's end. It's fine. It's fine. We're all here. Take a deep breath. Yes, that's it. Just close your eyes and sleep. In a daze, Natalia's aching head gradually eased, but there was an indescribable warmth in her heart. Chapter 6:11. After saying that reluctantly, Natalia fell asleep. Seeing this scene, Reynolds suddenly laughed. So that's how it is. After laughing, Reynolds suddenly showed a very peaceful smile and reached out to touch the little head of Natalia, who was sleeping in Avina's arms. Child, you've worked hard. Hey, Avina. What's wrong, teacher? I'm giving you a task now. Can you promise me that you can objectively complete it? Although she didn't know what her teacher meant, her intuition told Avina to agree without hesitation. Yes. Very good. I hope that in the next few days, no matter what happens, you can help me take good care of Natalia and Natalia, my 2 children. Hey, I could take good care of myself, okay? Natalia complained, but when she saw Reynolds' serious expression, she suddenly stopped talking. Okay, I'll shut up. Teacher, don't worry. No matter what happens, I'll definitely take good care of them. Yes, me too, including you. Oh, my head is so dizzy. Natalia opened her eyes in a daze, and an instant of dizziness rushed to her head. It was like a hangover the next day. She felt particularly uncomfortable, but at least she seemed to have had an unprecedented dream, so it was not a big deal. Natalia, are you okay? What happened to you just now? Avina asked anxiously. Nothing, just when I saw Teacher Reynolds just now, I don't know why I suddenly felt oppressed, and I felt that it was difficult to breathe. Don't tell me you've fallen in love with him. Natalia ridiculed. Natalia. Avina called her with some dissatisfaction. Okay, I'm sorry, it's my fault. Although Natalia was joking, it was obvious that she cared about Natalia very much. Natalia, are you okay? It's such a hot day. You must have a heat stroke. Drink more water to lower your body temperature. Reynolds planned to fabricate the cause of Natalia's headache. That's impossible. We've been resting in the car the whole time. Besides, we were just talking. It's impossible for us to get heat stroke. Natalia, you chatterbox. That means you didn't rest well and are a little tired. That's normal. That's even more impossible. Last night, Avina and I cleaned up Natalia's room and waited for her to fall asleep before we left. Are you her mother? Do you still want to sing a lullaby? Reynolds was speechless. Teacher, how did you get rid of my zombie magic? Natalia suddenly asked. Oh, that's easy. Reynolds took the opportunity to change the topic. Yes. And how did you make my lava giant disappear? Well done, Natalia. It's actually very simple. You just have to observe the magic formation you've released, and then use an interference spell to make it operate in the opposite direction at the same speed, as expected of Teacher Reynolds. Although I don't understand, it feels so amazing. Sai, you're so stupid. I can only explain it to you from the beginning. We magicians release magic. First of all, we have to mobilize the magic particles outside our body, which is the magic power of nature. Then, we have to regulate the magic power inside our body so that it reaches a certain balance with the magic power outside our body. Finally, we can make it materialize through incantation. Hey, what's with your expressions? Don't you know such basic things? What? We've never heard of these things you're talking about. Where did you learn them from? Teacher Reynolds, I don't know either. Natalia, who was sitting at the side, also nodded, indicating that she agreed with Reynolds. You're so stupid. Oh, Reynolds suddenly thought of something. Are you too ignorant? Are you playing with us again? No, 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 no. Reynolds hurriedly objected to Natalia's point of view. Actually, it's normal that you don't know. Have you heard of creation research? Creation research? Avina shook her head. Never heard of it. Creation research is actually the study of magic. It analyzes magic particles, the structure of the human body, and so on to create new magic. And this study is already a strategic resource for you humans. It should have been monopolized by the royal family. The new information was like a brand new key that opened up a new understanding of magic for the three of them. Their previous concept of simply releasing magic had also changed a little. In short, at this moment, they had embarked on a path of no return. Of course, this was a story for another time. In other words, Teacher Reynolds, do you know anything about creation research? I do. Then can you teach us? Hey, don't look at me like that, okay? It's very tiring. Looking at Avina's big eyes looking at him, the crystal blue of her left eye and the light blue of her right eye were really tempting. Looking at Natalia next to her, she seemed to be in a daze as usual, but if one looked closely, one would notice that Natalia's body was actually slightly closer to Reynolds than before, and her ears were moving up and down slightly. Oh, okay then, Reynolds said. Then I'll also. Natalia hurriedly said. But Natalia can't. Why? There's no why, I just can't. This is for your own good. If you don't want to teach me, then don't teach me. I don't care. Although that was what she said, Natalia was actually a little angry at Reynolds' favoritism. Perhaps there was a reason why he didn't want to teach her, but she was still a little angry. Okay, I can teach you something else, such as more powerful magic or something like that. Okay, don't pout. You're going to become ugly. Reynolds comforted her. Oof. Natalia, that's enough. Teacher Reynolds must have his own reasons for not teaching you. Don't be angry. Oof. Natalia turned her head and ignored the others. The speed of the carriage wasn't considered fast, but thanks to the shabby appearance of the carriage, it was considered safe along the way, and they didn't encounter any bandits' ambushes. Not far ahead, there was a small town. It looked about the same size as Wildflower Village. The houses made of khaki-colored bricks gave off a faint, earthy fragrance. The architectural style was also very unique. The roof was not like most houses that protruded upward. Instead, it was a bit like a ball with the bottom half of the roof concave. We're here. Look. Reynolds stuck his head out of the window and pointed in the direction of the carriage with his white and tender finger. Look, this is the place where we'll eat and live for the next week. Homing Village. Chapter 6:12. Everyone followed Reynolds' line of sight and found that this so-called Wungwung village was located in the depths of the mountains. The location was very remote, and there was only one main road to and from. It could be said that it was isolated from the rest of the world. Teacher, why did we come here? We are only going to eat and live here, but the specific training location is not here. Look, Reynolds used his index finger to point at the forest beside the village. We are going to train in the forest. The carriage arrived at Wungwung village in a short while. Just like what Reynolds had booked previously, he used the funds approved by the school to buy a piece of land here. As for the price, because Wungwung village's geographical location was really too remote, when Reynolds proposed to buy the land, the locals were very willing to sell it at a lower price. This way, both parties, especially the greedy Reynolds, would not be embarrassed. Teacher, why did you bring us to this place full of weeds? Avina looked at the weeds on the ground and suddenly had a playful feeling. She directly took off her shoes and jumped into the grass to roll around. Her dark purple hair looked especially beautiful with the green grass. Her 10 jade-like toes left footprints one after another, and her bell-like laughter could be heard endlessly. It was as if she had really returned to her childhood. Avina, is it really that fun? Of course, the scenery here is really beautiful. This is a fairy tale in a girl's dream. There are bugs. Where are they? Avina immediately stood up and patted her body. She looked left and right, and her face was full of anxiety. Whoa, bugs, so disgusting. Haha, this is really fun. Reynolds laughed out loud. All right, I'm just kidding. I have already cleaned up this place before. Not to mention bugs, there's not even a single weed. So, teacher, there's a weed here. Natalia discovered it and said, so, you guys could just stay here peacefully. Hey, don't ignore me. Teacher, there's only scenery here. Where's the house? Also, Natalia, you are very noisy. Whoa, Avina actually despises me. House, very simple. Let's build it now. Get out of my way. Reynolds walked to the front and used his finger to roughly measure an area. This size is fine. Lilith, Avina, didn't you want to study creation research? Look closely, this is a super practical spell that I developed myself. Reynolds took a deep breath, and in the blink of an eye, he gathered a large amount of yellow and green magic particles on his hands. He then half-knelt on the grass and placed his palms directly on the ground. Earth bonding spell. A huge roar came from the depths of the earth, and the surroundings began to shake violently, as if a ferocious beast had awakened. Surprisingly, a luxurious wooden house rose from the ground at the place Reynolds had pointed out with his hand. Whether it was the architectural style or the furniture specifications, they were all of top-notch quality, absolutely impeccable. You will be training very hard from now on. However, warriors do not fight unprepared battles, so I hope that I can provide you with the best in other aspects. Of course, the most important thing is that building a house with magic doesn't cost money. Faced with such a good accommodation, the three of them were suddenly filled with anticipation for the upcoming training. Even the taciturn Lilith revealed a faint look of yearning. Gather here at 7 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. You are not allowed to be late. Reynolds waved his hand. Dismissed. Ugh, I'm so sleepy. Reynolds walked with heavy steps to the newly built door. The dark circles under his eyes had already revealed his deep sleepiness. This was a relatively remote corner of Humwung village, so Reynolds simply did not bother to disguise himself with a transformation spell and directly used his original appearance. This allowed Natalia, Avina, and Lilith to enjoy a lot of eye candy. When he opened the door, he found that everyone was already waiting for him outside and seemed a little impatient. You guys are here so early. Reynolds had a premonition that something was wrong and asked tentatively, Hey, do you know what time it is now? It's already 1.5 hours past the 7 o'clock you said. Hey, don't tell me you didn't sleep. Natalia said in dissatisfaction, but then found that Reynolds' condition was a little strange, so she did not say anything more. It's okay, I slept for a while. Come, follow me. Reynolds led everyone to a large, circular open space surrounded by a forest that was filled with a dense aura of magic particles. The air was also clear and cool. It was a grade higher than the other places they had been in. There were also 3 large wooden stakes in the middle of the open space. They looked like 300-year-old trees that had been directly cut down the middle and left there. It was perfect for training. In order to cater to the name of going out for training, Reynolds deliberately put on the adventurer's suit that he had escaped from the magic palace to set off the atmosphere. Natalia, do you want to walk the path of a magic sword? Magic swordsman? Yes. Reynolds lowered his head slightly, and his right index finger touched the area below his nose. Actually, at present, your combat level is actually enough for you to look down on the heroes among your peers, but it's still far from enough. Reynolds raised his hand and instantly used white magic particles to construct a very detailed diagram of the human body structure. Whether it was the arrangement of the bones or the rhythm of the stretching of the muscles, they were all very clear. The human body actually has a limit. No matter how the body is trained, it can only increase the limit to a certain extent, but this is only one aspect. What one aspect? Natalia asked with some doubts. Usually, you train yourself through running, swinging a sword, or something like that, right? Yes, your positive attitude is very praiseworthy, but the method is not suitable for you. Reynolds put his hands behind his back and pretended to be an old man as he continued. You know the effect of ordinary training, so I won't say more. Have you ever thought of using magic to train? What does that mean? It means to integrate the magic particles in the air into your body, and then use it to make your body cells more active and greatly enhance your perception of the magic particles. Stop, stop, stop. Can't you make it simpler? I knew it. It's like a piece of meat. If you keep boiling it with water, it will definitely be edible in the end, but now you add a lot of spices. Think about it. Can the taste be the same? Chapter 613. Oh, I get it. Natalia was enlightened. All right, that's it then. What magic particles do you use to train? Then you have to understand that the process will be very painful. It's okay, I'm not afraid. Reynolds finally nodded as if he had made up his mind. He gently stroked the golden hair on Natalia's head with his right hand, revealing one of his rare, serious sides. Okay. Then he bent his arm and pulled Natalia's delicate face directly in front of him. They were so close that they could even breathe on each other's lips. Oh, wait. Natalia seemed to be lost in her thoughts. Both Iwina and Natalia blushed at the sight of this scene. Teacher, woo woo woo. Don't move, Reynolds shouted. Okay, Natalia replied proudly. Reynolds used the back of his hand to lift Natalia's bangs that were in the way, and then pressed his forehead against hers. Natalia's face turned red from excessive nervousness. A faint golden light appeared at the place where they touched, forming a flowing golden brilliance that flowed into Natalia's brain. This is all my memory about magic particles training the body. Take it and think about it yourself. Okay, come here. Reynolds let go of Natalia's little head and waved his hand, indicating for her to follow him. The two walked to the bottom of a tree stump and jumped up. The tree stump was very tall, and a height of 1 or 2 meters was enough to broaden their field of vision. Reynolds engraved a magic circle on the back of Natalia's hand to strengthen her senses. The rest was for Natalia to use the memory fragments to constantly feel the magic particles, then introduce them into her body to train the strength of her cells. Of course, she would have to endure unbearable pain during the process. Natalia walked to the center of the tree stump and sat cross-legged. Following Reynolds's guidance, she gradually closed her eyes and quietly felt the pulse of nature. Magic particles originate from the most essential essence of nature. There's fire, wood, water, and space. Feel it quietly and calm your heart. It's everywhere. It's flickering with light, but it also gathers a huge amount of power. Finally, after Reynolds's guidance, Natalia finally got the hang of it and successfully introduced some fire elemental magical particles into her body. Oh my God, are you stupid? I spent so much effort to train to this level. How long has it been since I said something so arrogant? I'm so disgusted by myself. Avina, come here. Reynolds jumped down from the tree stump, leaving Natalia alone. Hearing this, Avina hurriedly ran over. Her dark purple hair couldn't hide the blush on her face at all. Her mind was now full of the meeting between Reynolds and Natalia just now. Avina, why is your face so red? Reynolds asked in confusion. Oh, no, nothing. I ate too much chili just now. Yes, that's it. Oh, is that so? Reynolds paused. I often eat chili too. Yes, I can understand. Oh. Avina breathed a sigh of relief. Come here, let me see your eyes. Avina's face suddenly became even redder, just like red paint. Luckily, Natalia was cultivating on the other side, or she would definitely use this opportunity to tease Avina to death. Reynolds walked to Avina's side and leaned his face closer to stare at Avina's heterochromatic pupils. The crystal blue in the left eye and the light blue in the right eye were especially cute, and there were some veins in the pupils that were difficult to see clearly. Reynolds used his thumb to hold Avina's lower eyelid, and his index finger to touch her upper eyelid back and forth. He didn't notice Avina's strange state of shyness at all. In other people's eyes, perhaps Avina was making a face at Reynolds. Is that really the case? Reynolds withdrew his hand and thought for a while. Well, if that's the case, did your family tell you about heterochromatic pupils? No. Avina shook her head. Come here. Reynolds led Avina to a remote place, afraid that their next conversation would be overheard by others. Go back and pack your things later. Take a day off tomorrow, then go home and let your parents teach you how to use heterochromatic pupils. Try to rush back before the 7-school leap. But my parents said before that I'm not allowed to practice heterochromatic pupils. Don't worry, give this to them. As he spoke, Reynolds found something that looked like a badge from somewhere and handed it to Avina. They'll definitely teach you after seeing it. Oh, what's this? It's so magical. I begged them for so long, but they didn't teach me. Although that was what she thought, Avina was a sensible child. She knew what to ask and what not to ask, so she didn't ask. Heterochromatic pupils generally have 2 abilities, and it varies from person to person. When you go back, you must keep in close contact with me. I'll give you a contact crystal later. If you have any questions, you can contact me. Teacher, can't you teach me? I don't want to leave you guys. Silly child, it's not like you won't see each other again. It's just a few days. Why can't you bear to part with me? Well, I'll listen to you then. After persuading Avina with all his might, Reynolds followed the procedure and found Natalia. In fact, Natalia had always been a headache for Reynolds. Of course, it wasn't entirely because of her unsociable personality, but mainly because of some other reasons. Natalia, come out tonight. I want to ask you something. Natalia nodded. Oh, it's so comfortable. Tizia walked out of the bathroom barefoot. A large white bath towel was wrapped around her body. Plump water droplets dripped down along her collarbone, making a patter sound. It was very seductive. Avina, you said that idiot asked you to go home to learn. No, he asked me to go home and asked my parents to teach me how to use heterochromatic pupils. Well, although it's almost the same as going home to learn, it still means something. Avina sat on the bed and said, You said that heterochromatic pupils are a unique attribute passed down in our family for generations. This is a top secret. How did that idiot know so much about it? Even I don't know about it. As Tizia was taken in by the 3,000 families since she was young, she knew a lot about heterochromatic pupils. However, the most important secret was that there was a shocking secret behind heterochromatic pupils. Chapter 614. I haven't seen Uncle and Annie for a long time. Why don't I go back too? But Mr. Renault specifically told me not to let you go back. Bam! How about this? I'll go talk to him. Wait. Before Avina could finish her sentence, Tizia had already run out of the room. Tizia had no choice but to follow her. Renault's room was still 1 floor above theirs. It only took them a few steps to reach his room. As usual, Tizia pushed the door open and entered the room. Don't ask why she didn't lock the door. It was very simple. She either forgot to lock it or was too lazy to do so. The size of the room was undoubtedly a perfect replica of Renault's bedroom in the Demon Palace, Kardhar. A large and round bed was placed in the middle of the room. On the far left, there was a slightly dark brown desk. The standard of the room was much higher. Gosh, it's really hard for him to live in the school dormitory. Just as she lifted her foot before she could even step on the ground, Tizia felt Aina tugging at her from behind with a shiver. Tizia, there's no one in this room, right? AI Wayna said stiffly. It should be. Oh, I remember now. Didn't that idiot say that he had something to talk to Natalia about? You should have gone over by now. Then, why are there still sounds coming from the room? Let me listen. Tizia turned her head and pointed her right ear at the corridor. Indeed, there were some dripping sounds coming from the other side. It sounded a little scary. Tizia also felt a little scared. Then let's go back. You see, I even boiled some water when I came out. If we don't go back now, the water will dry up. Let's go. Avina was about to cry as she begged. No. Avina, fear is a very big stumbling block on the road of life. We can only succeed by overcoming it and defeating it. Tizia put her hands on Avina's shoulders. Let's go. Let's walk towards success together. Tizia, did you take the wrong medicine? No, I just want to help you overcome your fear of ghosts as your good friend. What? Last time, when we were watching a horror movie, I wonder who screamed the loudest. Also, Do you think I don't know that you want to go in and take away all of Teacher Reynolds' snacks? Isn't it just that the gluttony of eating worms has surpassed the fear now? All right, I'll accompany you. Let's go. Hey. How did you know about my plan? Also, why was the persona reversed now? Ah, ah. The two of them groped their way forward in the darkness. Although Tizia could use light magic to create some light, it would be very easy for them to be exposed. If Reynolds suddenly came back, it would be difficult to explain. Both of them were in a situation where they didn't dare to speak. It would be fine if they misheard the terrifying thing that they heard before, but if it wasn't that... Avina, let's go back. I don't want to eat anymore, okay? Tizia grabbed Avina's arm and said, No, I must overcome your fear of ghosts today. Hey, you're rebelling, really rebelling. Persona and whatnot. Avina, don't you feel that there's a pattern to this strange sound? Whoa, I feel like I've heard it somewhere before. Really? Why haven't I heard it before? On the other side, Avina seemed to be answering Tizia's question seriously. However, her mind wasn't actually there. Although her family didn't teach her the method to control her heterochromatic pupils, she could still control the passive ability that was given to her. Night vision. It was this passive ability. Of course, it was controllable. Avina didn't even tell Tizia this little secret. Oh, so Teacher Reynolds likes this kind of decoration. Avina's focus seemed to be a little off track. Avina suddenly ran to the side of the wardrobe and picked up a fluffy shirt. Rabbit pajamas. Suddenly, the image of Reynolds wearing this pajamas appeared in her mind. So cute. Avina, where are you? Why did you suddenly run away? Tizia shrunk her head and said with a trembling voice, Oh, I tripped just now. Ha! The two of them walked a few more steps, and finally, after 10 minutes, they arrived at the bedroom come living room. Sigh, it was mainly because the person with the 3 words in her name was dragging things out. Tizia screamed. What's wrong? Tizia? I think I caught something. It's fluffy, it's all meat when I pinch it, and it seems to be breathing. Avina felt like she was about to cry when she heard Tizia's tone. She hurriedly used her night vision to look at the thing in Avina's hand. Asterisk click. Asterisk, the whole room lit up as if it was daytime. See for yourself what it is. Avina subconsciously closed her eyes when she saw the bright light. I don't want to see. It's disgusting. Hey, give it to me. Avina opened her hands and took the thing from Avina. Good. What the hell? Hearing that Avina was playing with the thing as if she was coaxing a child, Avina suddenly became curious. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the world like a newborn child. So it's this rabbit. I don't know what it's shouting about. I thought it was something else. Sigh, don't mention it. Previously, when I went to his dormitory to hide the surveillance crystal, this rabbit was lying there and sleeping. Oh, I remember it now. I've seen it in the video before. It's so cute. Avina kept stroking it. Look at its cheeks. Why are they so red? Avina moved her nose closer and sniffed. What a strong smell of alcohol. Don't tell me it's drunk. Avina also sniffed it. It's true. How could our teacher let an animal drink alcohol? At the same time, achoo! The bunny wobbled down from Avina's arm and crawled back to where it was sleeping. Reynolds, you idiot. You're shameless and obscene. You didn't even bring me along when you came out to eat. Don't let me see you. Be careful, Burp. Be careful. I'll beat you to death. Avina suddenly didn't understand what was happening in front of them. This rabbit spoke. Natalia, I'm going to eat all your snacks today. You don't need the alcohol that I specially went to the town for. Hee. Then I'll frame all the crimes on those 3 little girls. Chapter 6:15. Oh my God, Avina. Why are the rabbit's eyes turning in circles? Also, why can a rabbit talk? Wait a minute. I think we don't need to pursue these 2 questions. The girls it was talking about were us, right? Oh, I almost forgot. I think so. Avina suddenly reacted. The 2 of them looked at each other at the same time and nodded to each other, as if they had reached some kind of agreement in silence. Avina walked to Natalia's side and used the tip of her foot to lightly kick it, who had just fallen asleep. "Hey, wake up! Wake up!" Sure enough, it was like a sow, unable to even make a sound. Life-filling water bullet. Avina shouted a mini version of a water magic spell, and in the blink of an eye, a fist-sized water ball formed about 1 meter above Natalia's head. "Fall!" With a command, the small water bullet fell directly, and with a bang, it hit Natalia's head, causing a huge splash. "What's going on? Earthquake, help!" The sudden water bullet directly pulled Natalia out of her drunken state. She sat up with her 2 hind legs, and then her eyes widened. "Oh my God, why is it these 2 girls?" Natalia stood up in a daze and quietly moved behind the curtain under the 2's gaze. "Can't see me. Can't see me. Stop hiding. I'm talking about you." "That's right, stupid rabbit." "What do you mean, dead?" Natalia immediately covered her mouth with her fat and tender paws. Her stupid appearance was indeed worthy of being described as cute. "Oh, what did you say? I didn't hear you clearly." Avina deliberately said in a provocative tone. I'll endure it." Natalia tilted her head and put her 1 centimeter long finger in her mouth, as if acting cute. "Acting cute is shameful. I heard everything you said just now." "Oh my God, when did I say that?" "Damn, I wouldn't say that when I'm drunk, would I?" "Calm down, you must calm down." Natalia walked to Avina's feet and rubbed her chubby cheeks against her clothes. "Sigh, I don't want to know who the 3 girls are, and I don't want to know their plan to steal snacks. However, I feel that our dear Professor Reynolds would like to know about this." "Poochie." Natalia immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm guilty. I accept my punishment." Natalia's voice was a little childish, very lowly. It was worthy of its size, but as for its personality, it still needed to be observed. "Sister T, no, Mother T, you're my biological mother. Don't tell that idiot Reynolds, or I'll die a horrible death." Natalia glanced at Avina tentatively and found that there was no change in her expression. She hurriedly said, "Let's do it this way. I'll tell you a lot of Reynolds' secrets." Avina rolled her eyes and glanced at Avina. She found that her eyes seemed to be full of brilliance. "Deal." From then on, Natalia's life, no, rabbit life, changed dramatically. "Natalia, why can you talk? I've never seen an animal that can talk in my life." After a short conversation, Avina suddenly found that the little rabbit in front of her was very fond of her. Perhaps this was the legendary birds of a feather flock together. "I'll tell you secretly, but don't tell Reynolds. Otherwise, you know what will happen." Natalia leaned on Avina's shoulder and said softly, "One day, I accidentally ate the golden carrot that he was researching, and then I could talk." "Golden gourd divination? What's that? Didn't he say something about creation research? Anyway, I don't know what it is. It's made from this thing, and it's quite delicious." At this moment, in the forest, the bushes rustled. Reynolds led Natalia deeper into the forest according to the plan. He pushed aside a large bush in front of him, and what greeted him was an even larger bush. Natalia followed behind Reynolds, and after walking for a long time, they finally stopped. "We're here." Natalia looked around and found that the surroundings had not changed much compared to before. Even the scenery in front of them was the same as before. Reynolds turned around and stared into Natalia's eyes. "What do you think? Don't you think this place is a little familiar?" Natalia nodded, and then said slowly, "But I can't remember where it is." "Pazzup Village." Plop! Natalia's heart trembled violently with these 3 words. Then she stood there in a daze, and her shrunken pupils were like small, bottomless black holes in her eyeballs, releasing piles of negative energy. "Hey, are you okay?" Reynolds gently patted Natalia's head with his palm, facing down. Why are you here?" Even though she could not see the Pazzup village he was talking about, everything here, whether it was the smell or the color of the soil, corresponded to the final land that Natalia did not dare to think about. Pazzup village. "I know. Your parents passed away here. Back then, your family came to Pazzup village to play, and unfortunately, they met with an accident. They encountered an unknown enemy invasion." "Stop talking. Stop talking. Stop talking." Avina covered her ears with her hands. and her voice grew louder. Then your parents risked their lives to save you from the crowd, but they didn't manage to escape, right? I told you to shut up. Avina threw out a corpse bomb with necromancy magic. Unfortunately, it was useless. Wait a minute, I'm not done yet. I mean, they might not be dead yet. Don't panic, let me analyze it for you. First, it depends on how you define a creature like humans. Reynolds pretended to cough deeply. Humans are made of matter. If you call the dissipation of a physical body death, then they might already be dead. I've already said it, let me finish. What if we recreate a physical body? You mean resurrection? That's right. A physical body is actually made up of magic particles that have changed. After they dissipate, they will naturally return to nature. In theory, as long as there is enough magic support and magic attainment, it can be done. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.